We wear our work, day by day, stitch by stitch. At Dickies, we believe work is what we're made of. So, whether you're gearing up for a new project or looking to add some tried and true workwear to your collection, remember that Dickies has been standing the test of time for a reason. Their workwear isn't just about looking good. It's about performing under pressure and lasting through the toughest jobs. Head over to Dickies.com and use the promo code WORKWEAR20 at checkout to save 20% on your purchase. It's the perfect time to experience the quality and reliability that has made Dickies a trusted name for over a century.
Isn't it about time for somebody's favorite radio program?
Yeah. 97.3 ESPN presents The Sports Bash with Mike Gill.
When I'm driving, I got a guy on the radio who talks to me. I can't see him, but he talks to me.
Now, live from inside the Ocean Casino Resort Studio, here's Mike Gill.
It is 2nd down and 2. Hurts lines them up. Hurts back to Barkley. He pushes. He shoves. He's in. Touchdown!
He's too strong.
To have him on a football team means a lot, right? Howie did a great job of putting this team together, and, he's a playmaker, and he's a great leader, and he's a great person. People feed off his energy, and so you could feel all that, not only the plays he was making, but the energy he had and the positive energy that he had out there.
Friday night, you heard it right here on 97.3 ESPN. Saquon Barkley earning his $12.5 million. What's up, everybody? This is the Sports Bash live on 97.3 ESPN. We are at the new Fanatic Sportsbook at the Gallery Bar Book and Games at Ocean Casino Resorts. Yes, indeed. Every Monday, we will be live at the Fanatic Sportsbook in the Gallery at Ocean Casino Resort here in Atlantic City. I'm your host, Mike Gill. We've got Josh Henning producing today's show back in the Ocean Casino Resort studios, and you out there. Well, it seems like it was a while ago because I'm sure you watched football yesterday and formed a bunch of opinions on what we saw yesterday. But overall, the Eagles get the job done in what I thought was an uneven performance in the game on Friday night against the Green Bay Packers. We'll get into it as we get you ready for the Monday edition. NFL Week 1 almost in the books. Jets and Niners tonight. And you can hear that game on 97.3 ESPN. Jets take on the Niners tonight here. I know that it seems that the game was very uneven. I think a lot of people are critical of what Hurts looked like the other night, and I think he was, quote, I said on Saturday, if you were following me at Mike Gill Show, I think he was uneven. I think Hurts played well at times, but he was uneven, made some really bad decisions. I mean, he just made some bad decisions that led to 3 turnovers. You're not winning a Super Bowl. You're not making a deep playoff run when your quarterback makes 3 mistakes the way that Hurts did on Friday night. I mean, he's got opportunities to make plays and wasn't able to make them. He absolutely takes, has too many different plays that he did not have to take the chances that he did. The one in the end zone, they just take the points. 3 points at that stage of the game. You're up 9, you win the game. And he nearly cost them a couple times with some other decisions that the Packers weren't able to make plays on. So I thought overall Hurts, has to be the guy we start with because he was so uneven in the game. But really, he did make some good throws. He did make some big plays. And I thought the biggest plays came late in the game. The 3rd down run where he just lowers the shoulder. And I saw that run and I asked the question of, have they coached him up so much to not do that he only pulls it out when it's absolutely necessary? When they needed that 1st down, he lowered that shoulder and just got those extra yards. It was a big run in the game. So I want to get into Hurts and get your guys' thoughts on Jalen Hurts and what he, if you were to use a word to describe Jalen Hurts' game on Friday night, which word would you guys use? I'm going uneven. Uneven is kind of the word that I used on Saturday, and it just kind of sticks with me. I would also, there's another guy that I thought was pretty uneven on the defensive side of the ball. We'll get to him in a little bit. On the offense, let's go around the horn. Saquon Barkley. And You know, Barkley, when they signed him, I thought was going to be a difference maker for this team. You know, and part of the reason is, hey, you pay the guy $12.5 million, you better use the guy. I thought they used him. I thought they could have used him more, actually. I liked how they used him. I think they could use him better, and I think they could use him more. But all of that means I think they got a weapon. You saw a guy who still has the Getty up. You saw a guy who still is an explosive player. You saw a guy that can kick it into another gear. You saw a guy that can dominate a game. And I think what the Eagles have with Saquon Barkley, as you heard in that opening call from Merrill Reese, the 2-yard touchdown run, he's too strong, is what Mike Quick said. He's strong on the goal line, but he caught that touchdown early in the game. They used him 2 catches out of the backfield. The other touchdown run, I thought the one run that was really that 33-yard run where they had him bottled up and he bounces it to the outside, he cuts it up the middle, and then instead of trying to run around the safety, he just damn near ran right through that guy. I thought Saquon Barkley gave you reason to be excited about what they're going to do with him in this offense. I think Saquon Barkley adds something that this team has not had. They give the running game an identity. You know, in the years past, you had DeAndre Swift and you had Miles Sanders. But what really was the identity of the Eagles' run game? Now the identity of the run game is dynamic. Now the identity of the run game is a tough guy that, man, I don't want to have to tackle this guy late in the game. That's the difference with a Saquon Barkley, and that's what you saw on Friday night. You saw a guy on Friday night that the Packers just had no interest in trying to tackle late in that game. 609-403-0973 on the text board. 609-403-0973 if you want to get involved on our text board. Let us know what you thought about the game. Give me some things that stand out. What word would you use to describe Jalen Hurts? Got the first text message here. What would 2 words to describe Jalen Hurts? No preseason. Yeah, him and everybody else. The whole no preseason thing, you got to get over it. You got to get over it. Nobody plays in the preseason. Jordan Love played in the preseason. He threw 2 passes. 2. I don't know. Okay, if you're the guy who says they need to play in the preseason, okay, think about this. Just put this together for me. Jordan Love played in the preseason. He threw 2 passes. Josh Jacobs played in the preseason. He had 2 carries. He had 1 carry, excuse me. Love threw 2 passes. Jacobs ran the ball 1 time. How did that help them? So if Jalen Hurts would have played and threw 2 passes. Now listen, if you're telling me that Jalen Hurts played in the preseason and he played a half of football the first half of every single game, okay, that's different. The last time the Eagles played a preseason game, which let's be honest, the starters were not going to play in the last preseason game. It just never happened. Even back in the day when the starters did play in the preseason, they weren't going to play in the preseason. The last time they played a preseason game, correct me if I'm wrong, Josh, was August 22nd. So you're telling me the week before that, the Eagles would have played August 16th. Actually, it was August 24th. They played Saturday. They played Saturday, August 24th, which was the last preseason game.
Right.
No starters were going to play in that game. So the last chance they would have had to play a preseason game was August the 16th. They had a Friday night preseason game. Is that correct?
It was the 15th. August 15th was a Thursday against the Patriots.
Okay, so their first preseason game was on the 9th, which was a Friday.
Correct.
Their second preseason game was on the 15th. All right, so you're telling me if Jalen Hurts would have played a series in a game on August 15th that he would have looked better in that game last night?
No.
I just don't understand the people's way of thinking with that. I kept seeing, like, no preseason. This is why you have to play in the preseason. The last preseason game, even if he played a half of football, would have been August the 24th. That's like 3 weeks ago almost. I mean, you're going back 2 weeks ago.
3 weeks ago.
3 weeks ago almost. So the whole preseason thing was not changing anything. Again, the Packers they played. Jordan Love threw 2 passes in the preseason. Josh Jacobs had 1 carry, and I don't think one of their wide receivers that played in the game on Friday night had a catch in the preseason.
No.
So the whole preseason thing, I'm sorry. We all miss those days where guys played in the preseason and we think it helped them. That's not changing the game. Here's what I would say. If you are stuck on the preseason thing and saying in your mind, and I'm not changing your mind about the preseason, the Eagles scored 34 points in the game and had no preseason. They scored 34 points in the game, and I thought the field was an absolute mess. I think that field slowed them down to the point where they could have scored 50 in that game on a better track. That field was an atrocity on Friday night. The NFL, again, should be embarrassed with the fields that they're putting out there in some of these international games, that Super Bowl game. But that game on Friday night for both sides was absolutely disgraceful. Disgraceful that they put those guys on that field. And I got to imagine that every time those guys were thinking about making cuts and making moves, that they were thinking about their feet slipping out from watching them.
And the problem, Mike, is that we have seen this again and again, and it's like the league doesn't care. And it's like we're fortunate that nobody was seriously injured because of the field.
No doubt. I mean, that field is disgraceful. The NFL should be embarrassed all night long. Every single time they went back to pass, Noah Eagle, who's doing the play-by-play, he's saying, slips, somebody slips, he slips, his feet come out from him. I mean, it was all night long. But that being said, for you to put up 34 points, now you might say you scored 34 points in part because the Packers defense was slipping and sliding all over the place.
Sure.
That might have been part of it too. But I think the Eagles on a normal NFL field, or man, God forbid, they play somebody on turf, that team is going to be fast. That team is going to be quick. That team is going to be tough to stop. So I thought Barkley lived up to the billing on Friday night. I thought Hurts was uneven. The offensive line, I thought, did a pretty good job in the game protecting. I thought the offensive line did a pretty good job in creating some holes, but I think they could play better as well. I thought Mekhi Becton was awesome in the game. I watched a lot of 77. He was really, really good in the game. I thought Juergens had a pretty good game outside of the snap issue where he snapped the ball, hits Hurts in the chest. There was obviously some miscommunication there. But for the most part, I watched a lot of Juergens and Becton, those two guys together, and I thought, because they're the two new guys, I thought they played really well. I said on Friday that I thought Smith would have had the big game and Brown would have had the lesser game. Brown had more yards, but I think other than the 66-yard touchdown, I think Smith actually had the bigger impact in the game.
Smith had the clutch catches.
He had the big catches late in the game. He extended the drives when it mattered the most. The chains were moving. He had some tough catches. Brown had the highlight reel 66-yard touchdown, and that's not to diminish Brown. Had a huge night. By the way, he's on my fantasy team, so I need him to have the big nights. But I thought Smith, I think he had the more important catches in that game. Overall, I think for 1 week, you have to be really excited about where this offense is. Agree or disagree? 609-403-0973. Are you excited about what you saw from the Eagles offense Friday night?
I am, because I think that you saw way more creativity than you saw in years past. I think that was the complaint that we had last year, right, Mike? It was the idea that this team's predictable. They're not moving in motion. They're doing nothing to make this team give other teams other looks. And statistically, Mike, according to NFL Next Gen stats, Hurts actually played better when they ran motion. I don't know if you saw this stat, but when the Eagles used motion, Hurts was 15 for 21 for 212 yards and 2 touchdowns. When there was no motion, Mike, Hurts was 5 for 13 with 2 interceptions.
Yeah, and we're going to talk to John McMullen about that later because they used motion on 51% of their plays. It's the highest rate in the game since 2021. And as you mentioned, Hurts was significantly better when the Eagles used motion. His QBR in those motion elements was 81.9, and he threw both of his TVs. Without motion, his QBR, 9.3, and he threw both of his interceptions. So I don't know what to make of why he would be so good with motion as opposed to not, because the one play that he threw the interception on, that was a play that was like a breakdown, and, it just kind of was like a schoolyard play where he's trying to direct A.J. Brown, and he had A.J. Brown kind of open, but he's throwing across his body. But I don't know. I thought that stat kind of stood out to me as well as whoa, is this actually something? Is it circumstantial? We'll talk to John about that later on. Since the start of last year, Hurts has a 74 QBR with the use of motion. It's the third highest mark in the NFL. Only Dak Prescott and Brock Purdy are better when they have motion on a specific play. So that's something to think about, and the way they use it. So I liked the offense on Friday night. Let me go to the defense. And you might think this is bizarre and nuts. I thought the defense won them the game. Now, are you scratching your head with that comment, or are you on board?
Oh, I'm on board, because I think that people overlook the fact that the offense handed them a couple tough field positions, and they stood tall in a lot of those situations.
Think about this. Did you like the defense on Friday night? Now, I know a lot of people were saying same old defense, all this.
The people who say same old defense don't actually know football, Mike, because they're not watching the game. They're just looking at the final score.
Well, they didn't get the pass rush. They didn't get enough pass rush, and I think a little bit of that was the field, but I digress on that. The Eagles' defense won them that game in the first quarter by holding Green Bay to 6 points.
Yep.
And as you mentioned, a very adverse situation. But the defense stood up in the first quarter, and that's when the game was won. If they give up the 2 touchdowns there instead of the 2 field goals,
it's over.
They don't win that game. They're down 14-0. Now you're playing from behind the whole night. Now, yeah, could they come back and win that game 48-44, maybe something to that effect? It's a possibility, I guess. But they won that game with their defense in the first quarter. Now, there's a lot of things about this defense that I thought give you reason to be excited. One, Quinyon Mitchell's a stud, and that dude can play. Quinyon Mitchell, you got a QB, a corner one. That dude is a shutdown, lockdown corner. I think he's going to be aces. I was highly impressed. That's the most impressed I've been with a rookie corner player, and I can't even remember how long. That guy had me after the game saying, this dude, he can play. All right? That's one.
And really quick, they went after him, too. It's not like he only saw a couple passes. Like, the Packers were trying to pick on him.
They went after him all night. And he was up for the challenge all night. And guess what? He was a cocky SOB. He was letting them know, you keep coming after me and it ain't going to go your way.
Yep.
That was one. Two, I don't know if I can count on Zach Bond for 17 weeks, but that dude balled out on Friday night.
Yep.
Zach Bond balled out. Now, do I trust that he is a 17-week linebacker that is going to get 15 tackles, 2 sacks, be very good? I mean, that guy played about as good as a game as I have seen from a defensive player for the Philadelphia Eagles in the entire time I've done this show. I don't remember a standout performance of that position in 15 years of the Sports Bash. He probably played the best game that anybody has played at that position. Nakobe Dean, I thought, was the same word I used for Hurts I would use for Dean. I thought he was very uneven. I thought he flashed at times. He made some great plays. But ultimately, in the trenches, he's too small. I thought he got blasted off the line a lot. And that's a position that you got to have to reevaluate for me. I thought he was uneven, Nakobe Dean. I know a lot of people are blasting him. Me and my buddy were going back and forth on this, and then another friend of mine jumped in and said he thought the Dean played really well. Then another guy said he was terrible. Look, I thought he was up and down. That was my evaluation. I thought he was up and down.
But Mike, the difference is that you can be a linebacker and be up and down and your team still win. You can't win every week if your quarterback is up and down. I think that's where the difference is.
Well, sure, yeah. You can't be uneven at quarterback and win. You could be uneven at linebacker.
So it's to me, that's why it's not as much of a concern that Dean was up and down because, for more often than not, he was actually contributing. And I think that's a positive.
Well, he made a couple big plays that stand out on the tape, and then people grab those plays, and they then show that he had a good game. Look, there's a lot of snaps in a game. I thought Carter played well. I thought Davis played better than Carter. How about that?
I think Carter played better than people realize, but they don't realize, Brian Baldo did a great breakdown. I thought it was this morning or the day before, but you see Carter basically opened up a lot of those opportunities for Zach Bond because he was getting double teamed.
Well, I thought Davis played maybe one of his best games as an Eagle. Huff was what I thought, non-existent. Wasn't a fan of the Huff signing.
Would Hassan Reddick have been better last night?
You would have to hope so. I mean, Huff was non-existent. They didn't mention his name until the fourth quarter of the game, and that was only to say that they hadn't mentioned his name. That was the only reason. Blackledge said late in the game, hey, watch out for number 0, Bryce Huff. We haven't mentioned his name all night. Yeah, no crap. He played less snaps than Brandon Graham and Josh Sweat and Nolan Smith. Not good. I was not a fan of the signing, and he gave me no reason to be excited. Nolan Smith didn't get enough pressure. I think the field had a little bit to do with that. He was slipping and sliding. His feet kept sliding out from under him. I felt like every time, they were baiting him into doing the same thing, and then his feet would just slide out from under him. Slay played pretty well. Blankenship had the interception, but overall, the safety spot was not, terrible in the game. They didn't really, I don't think they had a big impact or they were steady. The safety didn't hurt you. Chauncey Gardner-Johnson, he gives you a presence back there. I thought the defense, though, early in the game with those two stands won them the game.
I thought the defense doesn't get enough credit. Like I said, I think some people will look at the final score, and as you said, if they don't do what they do in the first quarter, that game is probably lost.
Over. If they don't get the 2 stops that they got on the turnovers early in the game, they don't win that game. So you have to look at the whole picture and say, hey, they gave up 29 points. I didn't like this. I didn't like that. But it goes back to the Super Bowl that they won. Can you make a stop? Can you get a stop? Can you make a play? Can you get that? And when push came to shove, they have guys that can make a sack, make an interception, make a play. And that's what I took from that game was, did they have a great game? No. They were okay in the game. But they had a guy that can make a play. They have a guy that can get a stop. And they got those stops on those 2 drives early in the game. And without those 2 drives, without those 2 stops, they don't win that game on Friday night.
Yeah.
That's where I start today. What do you guys think? 609-403-0973. 609-403-0973. Saquon Barkley, 3 touchdowns in his debut with the Eagles. And he'll look to do that again against the Falcons a week from tonight. Only 4 players in NFL history have had 5 touchdowns in their first 2 games with the team in NFL history. And only 2 Eagles have had 4 touchdowns in their first 2 games with the team. So Barkley will look to be the next guy next Monday. But we'll get into Barkley. We'll get into all that coming up on the Sports Bash Live on 97.3 ESPN. Mike McGarry from the Press of Atlantic City. The Eagles Friday night, Saquon Barkley saw the rest of the NFC East yesterday. The Giants look like they could be the worst team in the league. Dallas looked pretty good. And, of course, the Commanders fall short as well. Kind of what we thought in week 1 of the NFL, at least in the NFC East. We'll get into that. Plus, the Phillies had a awful Saturday and even worse Sunday. That's all coming up live from the Fanatics Sportsbook in the Gallery. Bar booking games at Ocean Casino Resort on 97.3 ESPN.
You're listening.
We wear our work day by day, stitch by stitch. At Dickies, we believe work is what we're made of. So whether you're gearing up for a new project or looking to add some tried and true workwear to your collection, remember that Dickies has been standing the test of time for a reason. Their workwear isn't just about looking good. It's about performing under pressure and lasting through the toughest jobs. Head over to Dickies.com and use the promo code WORKWEAR20 at checkout to save 20% on your purchase. It's the perfect time to experience the quality and reliability that has made Dickies a trusted name for over a century.
With Mike Gill.
Never thought this radio stunt would catch on so big.
On 97.3 ESPN.
All right, 2:30 Sports Bash, 34-29. Eagles win. They are 1-0. And, of course, you heard the game right here on 97.3 ESPN. Now, they'll get ready for the Falcons. We've got Monday Night Football tonight on 97.3 ESPN. Phil's had a rough weekend, 2-2 against the Marlins. But the two games they lost, just terrible. Or the injuries starting to pile up for them. Alec Bohm, JT Realmuto, Austin Hayes, all of them not available or on the injured list. Edmundo Sosa also put on the injured list. Seth Johnson threw yesterday, a forgettable debut for him. So we got Eagles, we got Phillies, we got Mike McGarry from the Press of Atlantic City and pressofac.com right now on the Sports Bash on this Monday. Michael, what's up?
Yeah, don't forget Bryce Harper and his elbow. He's on that injury list also.
Yep, you can add him to the list as well as a guy who's kind of banged up, playing through a little bit there. The injury thing with this Phillies team, you got about 20 games, a little less than that in the season. Is that something that is starting to enter your mind a little bit?
Yeah, it is. I mean, I feel really good about this Phillies baseball team, right? I mean, they're a game back of the Dodgers, I guess, for the best record in the National League. 3 games up on the Brewers for the number 2 seed. And I really like their starting pitching. But the questions, the guy who ran off, Bryce Harper, Ranger Suarez, big dip in velocity in his last outing. We'll see what happens this week when he pitches. Yeah, I'm concerned about this team being fully healthy and ready to go in about 3.5 weeks when the playoffs start.
You know, Mike, that 5th starter spot, it's Seth Johnson, it's Tyler Phillips, it's Taijuan Walker. Is it any of those guys? What do you do the rest of the way?
You look to survive it. I mean, what is that fifth spot is going to come up maybe 4 more times the rest of the season. I think you survive it. The 5th starter won't be on the playoff roster. So you just look to survive it and worry about it in the offseason. But you're right. It has been one disaster after another at the number 5 spot in that rotation. But again, the flip side is if your biggest complaint in September is your number 5 starter, you've had a pretty good baseball season.
Yeah, no, listen, you're right about that. The way they lost to the Marlins the last 2 days, is it just, hey, you had 2 bad days, the injuries piled up, you had Seth Johnson pitch, or are you concerned that this is another streak for the hitters that are just kind of always seem to pop up at the worst moments?
Yeah, I'm not concerned overall. Obviously, Seth Johnson is not a major league pitcher. He went out there, showed that yesterday, unfortunately for him. Aaron Nola had been really, really good. He was shaky on Saturday. I like the way this team is playing. I think Stott and Marsh coming around have been a big boost to them. Again, I'm worried about the injuries. JT, Alec Bohm, Bryce Harper, Austin Hayes. I'm worried about these guys being completely healthy for the postseason. I think that's the number one thing you're trying to do right now. Obviously, you're going to make the postseason. Looks like you're going to be the number 1 or the number 2 seed. I think you want to get the plane to the postseason and have everybody healthy and ready to go. And is that going to be possible? I don't know.
Yeah, I know that the injury thing. Of that group, you got Hayes, you got Bohm, you got Realmuto, you said Harper, obviously. Is there one that you're worried more about than Hayes? He has a kidney infection. He'll probably be back. I don't know what Hayes' role is, even when he does go back. But of that group, which guy are you worried the most about?
I'll give you a 1 and a 1A. Number 1 would be Ranger Suarez. Even though he was healthy, supposedly healthy, that dip in velocity, 2 miles an hour dip in velocity across the board in his last outing worries me. Now, maybe it's a dead arm. Who knows what? We'll see what he does this week. But I think the Phillies' strength is their starting pitching. And, Wheeler, Nola, Suarez, Sanchez. I think that's as good a 4 as there are in baseball. And if you take Suarez out of that mix, boy, now your number 1 strength goes down a notch. So I'm worried about Ranger Suarez. And I'm worried about Bryce Harper and that elbow. Doesn't sound like it's going to get better. How many times have we seen the Phillies turn games in the postseason with big home runs? Bryce Harper has done it himself. is he going to be able to hit for power in the postseason with that elbow? So Suarez and Harper are 1 and 1A for me.
Yeah, that's the point right there you just brought up. Mike McGarry from the Press of Atlantic City. We haven't seen Harper hit one over the fence in almost a month and a half now, I think it is. If he can't hit for power, and he's just a guy, I don't want to say just a guy, he's still Bryce Harper, but if he can't be the guy that he's been, what's the ceiling for this team?
Yeah, I mean, this team is built to win. And any team in the postseason, you know, you hit home runs and you pitch, you win games. And that's the Phillies have been successful the past 2 years. Without Harper, you know, the clutch player that he is, hitting the home run, you know, I still think this team could go deep in the playoffs. But I think it's a major, a major sort of deficiency in the arsenal if he can't hit for power or can't go up there and change a game with one swing of the bat like he has in the past. So, yeah, I'm concerned about the injuries having an impact on how far this team goes in the postseason.
Yeah, and the other thing is, too, you know, no Bohm for how much longer we'll find out. You know, you're throwing Wilson and Cody Clements because you don't have Sosa now playing third either. So it's like they're going to have to keep mixing and matching and figure out who's going to play third base for the next, you know, week or so.
Yeah, absolutely. And you want Bohm to come back soon because he's got to get some games under his belt before the postseason comes around. So the quicker he's back, if he can come back, I think he can come off the disabled list or the injured list, I think the end of this week. He needs to come back and get some swings, get some at-bats, get in the swing of things because it's tough to come back cold. We've seen guys kind of struggle after they've been injured, come back and look to find their swing. So, yeah, that's another concern, you know, getting Bo back and getting him enough at-bats. Like I said before, I think the number one thing for Ralph Thompson right now, obviously, you know, win the division. I think that's all going to take care of itself. But they've got to figure out a way to get healthy in the next 3 weeks. Because yeah, these injuries are mounting up, and I think they're an issue.
Yeah, you might not have been paying attention to it if you were watching the Eagles Friday night, and then yesterday, you know, the NFL was on all day long. You might not have noticed Sosa went on the injured list. You know, Johnson got lit up yesterday. It was not a good Saturday and Sunday for Philadelphia, but Friday night, Mike, I know it had to make you nauseous watching Saquon Barkley run wild out there, but what did you think of his fit as opposed to what you thought he was going to look like with Philadelphia Friday night?
Well, obviously he fits great, right? I mean, he was tremendous Friday night, and that's the Saquon Barkley we've seen, you know, playing for the New York Giants the past couple of years, and he's the type of player. He's like a great closer in baseball, right? You put a great closer on a mediocre team or a bad team, that closer is still great, but his value isn't as high as when he's on a really, really good football team. So Saquon Barkley is like that closer. Great running back. Yeah, he was great on the Giants, but what he does has even more of an impact with the Philadelphia Eagles. And I think you look at Barkley, and then you look at the wide receivers and the other weapons that the Eagles have at the skill position, you know, that might be as good a running back wide receiver combination as there is in football.
Yeah, you know, I'm not overly surprised. I'm surprised more about the amount of touches and everything and how big a part of the offense they made him. I'm happy to see that. I was hopeful that you signed this guy for big money. Now make him a big part of it. I guess the question, you watched him play with the Giants a lot. Did he seemed to have the burst. He seemed to have the speed. He doesn't look like a guy who's lost his step.
No, not at all. And that's what really separates him and makes him different than the average running back is that ability to break that big play on a consistent basis. He's a guy that, you know, how many times did, we saw with the Giants, he'd go 2 yards, 3 yards, -2, 1 yard, 50 yards, right? That sort of ability there to break every run and really either score or put yourself in position to score from any place on the football field. So he was, to me, the guy we saw with the New York Giants, every bit of that guy. And what he does is just only enhanced by how good the Eagles are and how good the other weapons around him are.
And the offensive line makes a big difference, right? He had nowhere to run. As you saw on Sunday with the Giants again this year, that team looks like they are in disarray from week one.
Well, first of all, they come out and they're dressed like the Montreal Canadiens. So I don't know what's going on with that uniform that they have. I know they're still 100th anniversary, but boy, Daniel Jones looked terrible. And for the second year in a row, the football season of the New York Giants seems to be over after the opening week of the season. So, we'll see what happens with Dable and Joe Schein. I think they get to pick a quarterback. I think they get to survive. This year they get to pick a quarterback, and then they're sort of on the clock. But, boy, the Giants really, did not look good at all, losing to Sam Darnold and the Minnesota Vikings, and not only losing, but just being handled by Sam Darnold and the Minnesota Vikings.
Yeah, I know that the stories yesterday of Daniel Jones getting booed and just heckled by people. I don't know. Do they have any place else to go?
Well, Cutlets, right? Tommy DeVito. I mean, I don't know.
Come on.
I don't think they have anywhere else to go. I mean, obviously, they made a decision this year not to trade up for the quarterback to improve other areas of the team. And you could say, okay, and try to see if Daniel Jones can play this year. Now, obviously, the results of week 1 were a disaster, so it looks like now you lose as many games as you can, and you pick the quarterback this year.
Yeah.
And I think you try to do what the Chicago Bears did. They sort of have a team, a pretty good team, a good defense, some good skill guys, and then they insert the rookie quarterback into that situation and hope you can take off faster there than an absolute rookie quarterback joining a bad team and beginning the rebuild that way. So I guess that's what would be the Giants model. You go get the quarterback and then you put him in, and they got some defensive guys. They've got some weapons on offense. They kind of rebuilt the offensive line a little bit. But, boy, when you don't have a quarterback in the NFL, and the quarterback play all weekend was not great. I thought the quarterbacks Friday night, I didn't think Jalen Hurts was any good, and I thought Jordan Love was worse. I thought the quarterback play around the league was pretty shaky, but Daniel Jones, of the 30 quarterbacks in football, he was number 30 yesterday.
I agree with a lot of that. I thought Hurts was uneven. I thought he was more good than bad. His bad, though, stood out so much. There were 3 just highlighted plays, but overall, I thought he made some, he made some pretty good throws, made some pretty nice plays. I mean, he pitched and catched pretty well, Hurts, but I do agree that the quarterback play overall. I want to get, I said early, I don't know what you thought of Fangio and the defense. If you look at the scoreboard, 29 points. I don't know if there's anything that stood out, but I think the defense won them that game by making the 2 stops they made in the first quarter. Without them, they don't win that game.
I agree 100%. I thought the defense saved the day. They turned that ball over twice early in the game, and Green Bay comes away with field goals. If Green Bay scores touchdowns there, that game's over, and Green Bay wins it. So I agree 100% with that. The defense won that game, and, wasn't as good as the defense as good, because I thought where Love was at his worst was in the red zone, just missing guys, the poor throws there. But give the Eagles defense credit. They won that game exactly as you said, with those early stops, giving up field goals there instead of touchdowns. If they give up touchdowns, the Packers win that game.
Mike, as a society, we're just obsessed with, if you're not the best, you're the worst. If you're not dominant, you're terrible. To me, that's what the Eagles were on Friday night. They weren't a dominant defense, but they were, they made plays when they had to. I loved what I saw from Mitchell, but I'll ask you about Zach Bond. Am I supposed to buy into this guy is a premier defensive player in the NFL all of a sudden?
Well, we'll see. He had a tremendous game at the linebacker spot, which has traditionally been a weak spot for the Eagles over the years. So give him a lot of credit and give that entire defense credit. I thought they showed some moxie. When their back was up against the wall, that's when they were kind of at their best. So it's the NFL. It's the Packers. They're a projected playoff team, made the playoffs last year. You're going to give up points in the NFL. The key is making those stops, giving up a field goal instead of a touchdown. And I give the Eagles credit. I mean, they're defensively, they showed more sort of moxie or guts or grit, whatever you want to call it, than they did probably all of last season.
Mike McGarry for the Press of Atlantic City, pressofac.com. Eagles win. Phillies rough weekend. They're back at it against Tampa. And a week from tonight, the Eagles will take on the Atlanta Falcons Monday Night Football. That was another team that I was disappointed in. Kirk Cousins and the Falcons, they lost at home. We'll go through the NFL. Mike, high school football week, what number? Is this 1, 2? What are they calling this?
Yeah. So you started week 0 and then you're week 1. So we're 2 weeks into the season and a great weekend here. Some teams with some hope where there hasn't been a lot of hope before. I think Egg Harbor Township is 2-0 for the first time since, I think, 2015. Vineland 2-0 for the first time since Isaiah Pacheco played quarterback for them in 2017. Bridgeton is 2-0 for the first time since 2013. So a lot of teams with a lot of hope this time of year where there hasn't been a lot of sunshine in past seasons for them. So that's great to see.
All right, good stuff as the high school football season's here. The NFL season's kicked off. The college football season's kicked off. The baseball season's coming down the stretch. And Mike McGarry from the Press of Atlantic City will be back on Wednesday to take a look at it all. What's going on, everybody? Mike, appreciate it as always, man.
We'll see you down the road.
All right, what's going on, everybody? I forgot to tell Mike that he can leave now. We got so much more to get into, including John McMullen at 3 o'clock today. Get his assessment of what he saw in the game on Friday night. It's weird the game was Friday night, but I still have all these thoughts still fresh in my head. I'll get John's thoughts on it coming up. Jeff Mosher has football at 4. Scott Grayson's grades, they're posted over at 97.3 ESPN.com. Who passed and who failed in the Eagles win over the Green Bay Packers. Now think about this, and we're going to get into this on the other side. The Packers, many thought, were a Super Bowl contender. Did the way the Eagles won that game change your mind at all? I got a lot of text messages. I'm going to read them off on the other side. You'll hear from Nick Sirianni also coming up next here on the Sports Bash on 97.3 ESPN.
We wear our work day by day, stitch by stitch. At Dickies, we believe work is what we're made of. So, whether you're gearing up for a new project or looking to add some tried and true workwear to your collection, remember that Dickies has been standing the test of time for a reason. Their workwear isn't just about looking good. It's about performing under pressure and lasting through the toughest jobs. Head over to Dickies.com and use the promo code WORKWEAR20 at checkout to save 20% on your purchase. It's the perfect time to experience the quality and reliability that has made Dickies a trusted name for over a century.
The Sports Bash with Mike Gill on 97.3 ESPN and the free mobile app.
We couldn't have played a worse first quarter than we did. Offensively, defensively did a great job of stepping up, and then we came back down the field. He hit Saquon with an unbelievable throw. You know, he's going to want some plays back, obviously, but I thought, Jalen started it as far as the dog mentality of playing through and handling the adversity. Again, it wasn't perfect by any means. We can help him out with some play calls here and there as well, but I thought he responded good.
It is 2nd down and 8. 3:55 to go. 2 receivers stacked to the far side of the field. Hurts in the gun. He's back. He steps up. He's going to run. Takes off to the outside. Pulls forward and muscles his way to the first down. He absolutely was hit. He refused to go down. He ran over Eric Stokes and picked up the first down.
That's how he answered. You talk about the adversity and then kind of going past it and coming back from that. I don't think he played an awful game. Some people thought he didn't play very well. Oh, if you saw Hurts and you think he had a good game, I think Hurts played particularly well, actually. He made some bad decisions. He made some bad decisions that, it's like the society we live in today. If you watch SportsCenter highlights, that's your opinion of the game that you saw. That's not the game at all. That's why I don't like the Red Zone. I don't watch the Red Zone because I'm trying to watch the game. I want to get into the flow of the game. I thought Hurts played well for about 80% of the game, and then the 20%, the 3 plays, he made a couple other decisions that weren't very good. There was one on the sideline that I thought Green Bay could have intercepted. They dropped it. A couple other decisions that he made that weren't great. I still think he's struggling in the run game, when to keep it and when to give it. He was great at that 2 years ago. I don't know how he is regressed in that area, But I thought he played a good game, not a great game. But I will say this. You can't have the 3 mistakes he made.
Right.
You can't have them and expect to win. That's where you have to be critical is he played a good game. But the 3 mistakes he made it good and not great.
Mike, one of the texts that come in at 609-403-0973 says, Mike, I was impressed with the Eagles win on Friday night, but now I'm concerned about them. They need to get to 3-1 at the bye week. Can they take out Atlanta, New Orleans, and Tampa?
Well, I was not impressed with Atlanta yesterday. I watched a lot of that game. That was one of the games that was on TV locally. New Orleans looked phenomenal, although Carolina stinks. Tampa looked pretty good yesterday as well. We'll get into that a little deeper. Yeah, they should be able to get to 3-1. They're better than all 3 of those teams. They're better than all 3 of those teams. And I think on a regular football field, not that slop fest that was down there in Sao Paulo, they probably could score 45 to 50 points yesterday against a Green Bay team. Green Bay, with Jordan Love, is better than those 3 teams they have coming up. But a lot to continue to look at. John McMullen, host of Birds 365 on the Jacob Media YouTube channel, set to join us on the other side. What did he see from Hurts? I think the defense won them the game early in the game. Does John agree? Was he impressed with the Eagles' defense? That's all next here on the Sports Bash.
This is the Sports Bash with Mike Gill on 97.3 ESPN and the 97.3 ESPN free mobile app. Now live from inside the Ocean Casino Resort Studio, here's Mike Gill.
On first down. This time it goes and right up the middle for a touchdown goes Saquon Barkley, his second touchdown of the game. One by air and one on the ground.
Oh, boy, did they part the sea that time.
And he gets 1 through the air, 2 on the ground. He does it in a variety of ways. He had just a huge game on Friday night. Was it the game that John McMullen envisioned? We'll ask him from Birds 365 here on the Sports Bash Live on 97.3 ESPN. You know, one of the things about Barkley's game the other night was the fact of he showed the speed and the burst. That's what I was hoping to see. I wanted to see if he still had that beast, that shape, that plant, that move, the ability to change directions. They had him bottled up on that 33-yard run, and he was able to stop on the dime, bounce it to the outside, run through people, run around people. I thought overall everything you wanted from Barkley on Friday night is what you got, and there's more to come. I mean, that field certainly, I think, limited his ability and everybody's ability to really have a breakout, explosive performance. You know, one of the things with the game on Friday night, as McMullen, by the way, Sirianni is speaking in a few minutes, so he won't be able to join us right now on the Sports Bash with the weird schedule that they have this week. So we'll keep it here. One of the things that you take a look back to Friday night, and let's rip off some of these. I know we got a ton of text messages in the first hour, so we'll read off some of the text messages here and kind of get some thoughts on those. But I thought one of the things with the offense on Friday night, you talk about the motion that they have, and that was one of the things I wanted to talk to John about. You know, they have not had a lot of motion in the past, and they had a lot more motion in the game on Friday night. And it not only helped Hurts, but I think it also helped guys like Smith. You put Smith in the slot and had some matchups there that you were like, Dotson, by the way, was not a big part of the game at all. In fact, I don't think he had a catch in the game. But he was not a part of the game at all. But them moving guys around, I think, created some issues in the secondary for the Packers. There was one other thought, you know, that I had on the offense. I got to try to remember what that was. I was going to get into it with John. But let's get a couple text messages here as we get ready to start hour number 2 of the Sports Bash.
Yeah, Mike. So Rick from EHT says, hey, Mike, did you watch some of the quarterback play yesterday? I will take uneven Hurts, which is the alternative to the putrid what I saw from Levis, Minshew, Danny Dimes, and Kirk Cousins.
Yes, I watched a lot of the quarterback play yesterday. Deshaun Watson was probably the worst of all of them yesterday. He was so bad. He was unplayable. Danny Dimes, I mean, he just isn't very good. The team's not very good. Their offensive line stinks. By the way, Cleveland's offensive line didn't help Watson out either, but he had elementary throws that he couldn't make. Quarterback plays bad. Real bad. Yes, Hurts was one of the top 5 quarterbacks in the league this weekend. Overall, by the way, Jordan Love, who was impressed with him? He was 17 for 30 or 17 for 34 or something like that. Jordan Love did not play well. Now, I got to be honest with you. I thought some of the throws that Love made were not great, but I also thought some of the plays, his receivers' feet were slipping out from underneath him on multiple occasions. I thought that field was a factor for both teams negatively. I don't think it, helped out one or the other. I think it hurt both of them. Both of them. 100%. I can't sit here and say that it helped the Eagles win the game. I think it hurt the Packers, and I thought it hurt the Eagles. I thought that field was absolutely... if there was words I could use that wouldn't get me in trouble by the FCC, I would use them over and over. That field was so bad. It was worse than the Super Bowl field in Vegas a couple years ago.
Mike, also on the text board, Nick from Delaware chimes in. He says, I enjoy the offense except for the quarterback design runs. Let this man run when he needs to scramble.
I don't mind the quarterback design runs. He has it in him if it's a play. They ran one that worked pretty well on a quarterback draw. They didn't use them a whole heck of a lot. I will say this, Nick. The RPOs 2 years ago, he made the right decision almost every single time. Last year, it felt like he never made the right decision, and Friday night, it felt like the RPOs, he never made the right decision. He would take it, and there was nothing there. He would give it, and there was nothing there. He pulled one, and he tried to throw it. There was nothing there. I thought he just did not make very good decisions in the RPO game again.
Also on the text board at 609-403-0973, an anonymous texter says, on the end zone pick, my immediate reaction was that you don't have to throw across your body like that. It looked like but on replay, A.J. Brown was open for a second and called for the ball.
Yeah.
And then he completely slipped in the back of the end zone.
I said the same thing earlier. Well, Brown was open. He just kind of, schoolyarding it. Hey, pointing at him. You go over here. Brown's open. He throws it across his body, and he just didn't get there. But that's a decision you can't make. Think about this. Time and score of that play. If he just throws it away and you take the 3 points, what's the score? Right? You're now a 2-score game. So you can't make a mistake there when you know that the result, if you just play it safe, is that you're going up 2 scores. I'm pretty sure that it would have been a 9-point lead had he not, if they just took the 3 there.
Correct. It would have been 9, but they didn't get it. So
right, and that's why if you're down in the game and you're trying to come from behind, I'm not advocating that, but I understand the gunslinger mentality a little bit more. But you have the lead in the game, and you have the ball in the red zone. You have the points coming to you. You have to know that. I have points no matter what happens on this throw right here. So I'm not going to take a chance of turning the ball over. If I just eat it, throw it out of the back of the end zone, I can kick a field goal, and now there are 2 scores behind us. That, to me, is elementary.
Also on the text board, Mike at 609-403-0973. Texter says, Barkley is chasing greatness. That means something. He thinks he's great, and he thinks he's going to prove something to the NFL. He wants to bust in Canton and wants to be considered one of the greats, and he's using the Eagles to get to that position.
Listen, Barkley wanted out of New York because they didn't want to pay him. He would have stayed in New York, I think, if they paid him possibly. But that being said, he came to Philadelphia for the possibility of playing behind a really good offensive line. But the $12.5 million does it all. It just happens that this team has one of the best offensive lines in football. So if he's going to change. He was the second pick of the draft. That pick got criticized because they should have taken a quarterback, many people felt. Remember, Darnold was in that draft. Luckily, they didn't take Darnold. Although Darnold actually played pretty well yesterday.
Darnold actually did not play bad yesterday. He's one of the quarterbacks who actually performed.
Yeah. But the pick of Barkley got criticized because they thought you don't take a running back at number 2.
Correct.
I feel like he's never had that year that gave him the profile of where he belongs. Is that fair?
Oh, it's 100% fair because you're talking about a guy in Barkley who, let's be realistic, he was a great running back in college, but no one looks at running backs anymore as a premier position in the NFL the way they used to.
No, not at all. No, the running back position, although this offseason surprised me at how he got paid, Jacobs got paid. And, Jacobs had at the end of the day, I heard Billy barking about this yesterday, but I thought Billy was off base on this. Jacobs had 2 big runs. You take those 2 big runs away, I thought the Eagles did a pretty good job in bottling him up. He was, bemoaning that Jacobs averaged I don't even remember what his average was, but other than the 2 big runs that Josh Jacobs had against you, they really kind of bottled him up, I thought, pretty well.
Also, the text board, Mike, at 609-403-0973. Texter chimes in and talk about Zach Baun, Mike. He says Zach Baun played amazing. So excited about him. The 2 red zone stops were huge for the Eagles defense, but then they also let the Packers drive up and down the field all game. But the 2 stops in the first quarter were huge.
The 2 stops in the first quarter won them the game, in my opinion. I go back to, do I think the defense played a great overall game? No. But I think they showed that they can make plays. They've got, they got a new coordinator. They're figuring some things out. But they showed that they can make stops and make plays. I thought the 2 stops in the first quarter of that game won them that game. Without those 2 stops, it's 14-0. It's a completely different thing.
Cole from LBI chimes in, Mike, on the text board, says the offense of the Eagles is loaded with talent, but I'm afraid Hurts will throw close to 20 interceptions if he keeps playing this style of offense.
Well, if he keeps playing this way, Cole's right. Yeah, if he keeps, acting like he's Brett Favre out there, then yeah, he's right. Jalen Hurts is not Brett Favre, okay? He's not a gunslinger. He doesn't have this hose for an arm. Jalen Hurts was great in 2022 because he made the right decision every time. Now, that's a high standard to put yourself up to, is that you are the guy that makes the right decision every single time. You know how hard it is to make the right decision every single time? That's a hard thing to do. So he doesn't have this great arm. So he has to be a great decision maker. Can he be that guy? And if he's not, what is he? I don't know. But he made a lot of good decisions and a lot of good throws. I mean, the throw he made to Barkley on the touchdown, he puts it right where it needs to be, right?
Yeah, and Mike, if I could answer your question you asked earlier in the first hour about Jalen Hurts, the word that I would use is Hurts was overthinking. Mike, as the world's foremost expert on overthinking myself, I can tell you that was a man
I can vouch for that,
whose gears were churning very hard in his head on Friday night.
I got to tell you, I don't know if anybody agrees with me on this. I think that field was playing with Hurts as well. I don't even think he felt comfortable planting his foot to throw the ball.
It's certainly possible because everyone was slipping on that field. Remember the first handoff to Barkley, he slipped.
The handoff to Barkley, he slipped. Jordan Love went to plant his back foot, and his foot went sliding out from under him.
Yep.
I think that field played a big factor in everybody's. And you would say, well, the Eagles had Barkley with 100-plus and Brown with 100-plus, and yeah, that's how good the Eagles are.
They adjusted, though. It's like I was listening to Chris Long on his podcast, Mike, and he was saying, look, professional athletes will adjust. They'll figure it out if they're good enough players. And Barkley figured it out, right?
Yep.
Also,
Barkley did.
Yes.
I don't know that Hurts did.
No, Hurts did. That's true.
Although, no, I take that back because late in the game.
He did run.
And this is where I wonder, because there was a play where I thought he could have given a little bit more on a play, and he just kind of slid and gave up on it.
Right, he slid down after he got the first down.
To the right hand. No, he came short of the first down.
Oh, you mean in the fourth quarter?
In the fourth quarter, he came short of the first down. He ran to the right. I thought he had more that he could have done to try to at least get that first down, and he just kind of gave up.
I was thinking
the next play on the same drive, he went to the left-hand side, and that's where he lowered the boom and said, I got to get this. So, I don't know, man. It was frustrating.
Also,
by the way, Jacobs had 16 carries for 84 yards. He averaged 5.3 yards per carry. So the 5.3 is you would look at that and say, man, he had a pretty good game. by the way, Scott Grayson's going to do Grayson's grades at 3:30, and McMullen's going to come on at 5 tonight. So those two guys are going to kind of flip-flop. But Josh Jacobs had a 32-yard run in there. He had a big 32-yard run, and that's a play where Dean just got blown off the line, and Jacobs went right through the middle. But there were two runs that Jacobs had where he really had some 32 yards. I don't remember what the other one was. But you take those two big runs away, and I thought the Eagles did a good job of bottling him up. But, yeah, 5.3 yards a carry they gave up to him.
Couple more texts I want to get for you, Mike, here on the text board at 609-403-0973. Kevin in Canada chimes in. He says, what you said, Mike, is exactly what I've been saying about the Giants, how bad they are. It was a great win for the Eagles. Barkley is a beast. Definitely Hurts is ready to stop running. No more tush push, though. Just give it to Barkley. Love the show, Mike. Kevin in Canada.
Tush push, they fumbled once. They didn't get it another time, right? They went for it on third down.
Correct.
Didn't get it.
They went for it
on
again.
The goal line and fumbled. So
that goes back to the whole center exchange issue.
Well, the tush push, right? You could be seeing the evolution of the tush push kind of changing a little bit here. But Kevin, appreciate the kind words, by the way, man. But yeah, I mean, the tush push was definitely not a gimme on Friday night.
No, definitely not. Phil chimes in at 609-403-0973. Says, Mike, week one, it's always going to be rusty. You have two new coordinators, new players on a terrible surface. I'm just happy they won the game, says Phil.
Well, yeah, I mean, if they won 3-0, I don't care. You shuffle it away, you get on to the next one. I'm never a fan of how the game looks stylistically, and then that's how the next week's going to go. We all know that this is a week-to-week proposition. You try to find things that you can build off of. And I think what you can build off of is how they use Barkley, but how creative they got with Smith and Brown and the matchups they found there. I thought Moore did a good job of getting those guys into matchups that were favorable for them. So there were things they can build on from them. But, yeah, Phil, you're absolutely right. Win the game, move on, and get ready for the next one. But there were some very key things in that game that I think you could take moving forward that you can build on.
Mike, another text asks, hey, Mike, can you ask either John McMullen or Football at Four Guys what was going on at corner? Didn't last week we hear that Ringo could be part of the game plan? It seems like Fangio switched it up. I think Maddox's best days are long gone. What are your thoughts?
All right, two things on that. I agree. I'm interested to hear what Mosher will be on for Football at 4 today about the why more Maddox than Ringo. Now, Pro Football Focus, did you see the grades for Pro Football Focus?
I did not see them yet.
I'm interested to see what Maddox's grade was because many people thought that he had a rough night at the office. I would say that he also had a rough night at the office. They went after him a lot in that slot there. Reed had a big night going after him. Mitchell had one bad play that he got caught on the touchdown.
Right.
He got kind of caught looking. They highlighted that on the thing. But I thought Mitchell was outstanding. And I think from that game, it'll be interesting to see what they do moving forward with Rodgers. Or do they just try to say, you know what? Do they want Maddox to kind of take that role and keep Mitchell on the outside? Did they see enough from Mitchell to say, you know what, we don't want to keep moving him inside and out. We just want him to go on the outside, and we're going to keep Maddox in the slot. I'm interested to see how that goes moving forward. Or do they think that Maddox had such a rough night that they're going to end that, I don't want to say experiment because Maddox has played a lot of slot before.
He has played. Mr. 305, Mike chimes in. Mike, remember when people wanted the Eagles to trade for Deshaun Watson? See how grossly overrated he is?
I wasn't one of those people. In fact, there was a guy on Twitter that used to blast me all day, every day, and I just, I laughed because he would say, you got to get Watson. They got to get Russell Wilson. And I said, I'm good with Hurts. I'll stick with Hurts. You trade for Russell Wilson. You trade for Deshaun Watson. I don't need those two guys. And I said in that draft, I didn't want anybody in that draft class, which was Bryce Young. And I would have taken C.J. Stroud.
Right.
But that being said, I was willing to get – now, actually, it wasn't last year's draft. It was 2 years ago. Who was in that draft class?
You mean the one with C.J. Stroud?
No. 2 years ago. Not last year's draft. The one before that. Not this year. Last year had Stroud and Young. The one before that.
You wanted the one before that. So you're going to 2022.
Yes.
That would have been...
That's when they traded for Watson.
Let me see here.
2022.
I mean, that was the draft where there was no quarterback in the top 10. So
right. There was a guy on Twitter who used to come after me all the time. You got to trade for Watson. You got to trade
Kenny
for Wilson.
Pickett. Kenny Pickett
all
was
that,
the
like
first
that
round
group.
pick.
And I said, nope, I'm okay giving Hurts another shot. Deshaun Watson's cooked. Can't play.
Oh, that was
and
also
by the way,
yeah.
not only can he not play, his team wants nothing to do with him.
Yeah, they are over him. By the way, that was also the draft with Malik Willis, who you saw who couldn't get off a Hail Mary on Friday night.
Yeah, and I would imagine he's going to be the starter there for the next 6 weeks.
I'm guessing so. I mean, the report that I saw was Love's going to be out for at least 4 to 5 weeks.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, well, they said 3 to 6.
Matt in Sicklerville chimes in, Mike. It says, the Eagles defense saved us on Friday night. Holding them to field goals after turnovers was huge. Hurts is bipolar, Mike. He has to stop with this great or terrible. He's always up and down. Got to be more even, says Matt in Sicklerville.
Matt sounds like he listened to the first hour of the show, although bipolar I think is too strong of a word. I would say more uneven.
Yes.
I said 80% of the snaps I think Hurts was fine. 20% of the snaps I think, the 3 plays, the 2 picks that really stand out, and then, there's a couple other plays here and there. I thought the 3 plays I'm adding in, it was the one dropped interception that Green Bay missed the interception on the sideline over there. That should have been they should have picked that off.
Another text kind of chiming in says, Mike, what did you think of Kellen Moore's first game?
Thought he did a good job, and I think that he can expand on that, learning what he can do and what he can't do. I think he can see now, hey, I could do more with Saquon Barkley. I could do more. I thought he did a great job, and I said this earlier. On Friday's show, I said that the game ball would be Devontae Smith. You could almost make an argument. Of course, it would go to Barkley in this game. You know, you get out game balls, Barkley gets the game ball. He was the best player on the field. But you can make an argument that while he didn't have the most yards, that Smith had the most important catches in that game late in the game.
Absolutely. Also on the text board, 609, we got tons of texts.
Keep them coming.
403-0973. Cole from LBI has a follow-up, Mike. He says, that throw Hurts made to Barkley was a dime, and the throw over to Brown was perfectly thrown in stride.
Both of them. Those 2 throws I brought up earlier. The throw he threw to Barkley was a perfect. The one to Brown, 66 yards, hits him in stride and lets Barkley get off to the races. He threw another pass. I think it was to Brown, low. Maybe it was Smith, low, that nobody else could get it. He had a couple throws that were money throws, that were big-time drive, extenders. He played a pretty good game. It wasn't a great game.
Yeah, well, Cole from LBI goes on to say, he said, you think the issue is Hurts is better throwing to the outside of the numbers. He thinks the issue with Hurts is ability to read the middle of the field. That seems to be where all of his bad throws are.
Yeah, I've heard a lot of that he doesn't like to throw the ball over the middle of the field. It'll be interesting. As we talked about earlier, his numbers with the motion as opposed to no motion, I think that's something to kind of look at.
Another text coming in at 609-403-0973. Todd in Brigantine says, hey guys, just so you know, even with the result of Friday's game, I still think this is a 7-win team.
Yeah, I think Todd texted Friday, if it's the same Todd in Brigantine. I have to imagine more than one Todd lives in Brigantine, but Todd's a regular texter. I thought he was on something on Friday when he texted in, and I still feel like he could be under the influence. I mean, come on, dude. You watch a game on Sunday. What teams in this league did you watch and say, man, that team's going to be tough?
Todd, follow back up and let us know what the team is that you think is tough. By the way, Mike, I'm putting it up on the StreamYard. If people hashtag SB Live, you can see the next gen chart there, where it's obvious all the completed passes are, except for one, are outside the numbers. Like, it's pretty brutally obvious what Hurts did well and didn't do well the other day.
I didn't see that graphic. That's a pretty good graphic. Good find. Yeah, it's obvious. And a lot of people have commented on that he does not like the middle of the field. But going back to Todd's thing, come on, they ain't winning 7 games. If they win 7 games, Todd, I'll come up with something that I'll have to do for you.
Terry from Galloway chimes in, Mike, says, due to the horrible field conditions, I still don't know what to make of either the Eagles or the Packers. The NFL should be embarrassed that 2 good teams leave Brazil not knowing who they are.
Have no problem with that. I'll tell you this. Green Bay, and I brought this up a lot. A lot of people did we anoint them too early? I don't know that we anointed them too early, but I didn't think they had a very good defense entering the game. I have no reason to think that that's a great defense. I think their defense is very average. I thought that going into the game. That's what my score, I think, on Friday was 31-24, something like that.
I don't remember your exact score, honestly. So.
It was 31.
I know you had 31 something.
Yeah, 31-24 or 31-22, somewhere in that. It was somewhere in that range, but I just don't think Green Bay's defense is very good. Where did they get pass rush from? Who's the guy on that team that scares you? They got the one guy in the secondary, Alexander. Their defense is just blah. And I thought their offense was getting way too much credit. They don't have a receiver that's the man. They have a bunch of good receivers, but I don't know. To me, they went 9-8 last year. That team's 10-7 type of team. That's what I thought. Now, Todd Brigantine thinks the Eagles are a 7-10 type of team. I don't know what he thinks the Packers are then.
Maybe he's a Dallas fan.
I don't think so. I think Todd Brigantine has civic pride. I think he's a guy that, loves the community that he lives in. But I just think he might be under the influence. That's all. I kid. When we come back, Grayson's grades. Who passed? Who failed? Find out with Scott Grayson from Fox 29 and 97.3 ESPN.com. That's next.
You're listening.
We wear our work day by day, stitch by stitch. At Dickies, we believe work is what we're made of. So whether you're gearing up for a new project or looking to add some tried and true workwear to your collection, remember that Dickies has been standing the test of time for a reason. Their workwear isn't just about looking good. It's about performing under pressure and lasting through the toughest jobs. Head over to Dickies.com and use the promo code WORKWEAR20 at checkout to save 20% on your purchase. It's the perfect time to experience the quality and reliability that has made Dickies a trusted name for over a century.
With Mike Gill.
When I'm driving, I got a guy on the radio who talks to me. I can't see him, but he talks to me.
On 97.3 ESPN.
And the gun is Hurts. Barkley to his left. Slot to the near side. Hurts back. Here comes the rush. He steps into it. He is going deep. It is caught. Complete. A.J. Brown to the 20, to the 15, to the 10, the 5. Touchdown! Hurts to Brown. 67 yards.
As heard Friday night on 97.3 ESPN. Merrill Reese, Mike Quick on the call. A.J. Brown, a handful on Friday night. Everybody was a handful on offense. What did Grayson think? Grayson's grades, as he gives you the grades after every Eagles game here on the Sports Bash Live on 97.3 ESPN, and he is back for another season of Eagles football here. Scott Grayson, what is up, buddy? How are you?
Doing good, Mike. It's good to see you again.
Yeah, man, and, Friday night, a little weird feeling, little Friday night game, so it's a little further back in our mind. But the grades are up. They're posted over at 97.3 ESPN.com, and you heard the A.J. Brown there. I mean, you could really, we do game balls on Friday. I had my game ball going to Smith. Yardage-wise, he didn't have the biggest game, but I thought he had some big moments in the game. You had Brown with the 66-yarder, but I think we have to start at the top of the report card with Saquon Barkley and how – the impact that you thought he was going to give this offense as opposed to what you saw from him on Friday night.
I've been one of those guys over the last few years that has been like, give Miles Sanders more touches. Give, X running back, whoever it was, more touches. And I did not expect them to give Saquon the kind of workload they did. I thought it would be, in the upper teens in terms of touches. He ended up with 26 touches in this game. And I loved it. I loved the way they used him. I loved what they did with him. The only thing that they didn't do with him that I would have liked, which is probably somewhere in the playbook for later in the season, is a screen or two with him, with some linemen out in front of him in an open field. I would love to see how that goes. But him, we've heard about how good he is as a receiver. He showed it. He's the kind of running back that can break a big one when he gets the chance. He did. I think he got a lot more comfortable with the offensive line as that game went on, because if you look at how he ran in the first half versus the second half, you saw a more patient back. He got in the hole, made a move. He waited for it to open, and he went through. I just thought that I loved what they did. He exceeded my expectations for what his debut would look like. And frankly, he was every bit the back they wanted when they got him, and I think it worked out really well for him.
Yeah, Scott, the one thing, as you kind of mentioned, I think there's more there. I think there's more peels of the onion for Barkley, because I want to get your thoughts before we go to the grades, which, by the way, are brought to you by GMS Law. Make the right call with 4 convenient locations to serve you at gmslaw.com. How the field factored into what could have been a bigger night offensively. I thought a lot of those guys did not have peace of mind of, if I make a cut or if I try to reverse field or if I try to do something, that this field's going to handle me.
I think the Eagles figured that out pretty early in the game, which is why you didn't see, they tried to run outside on the first play of the game. It went for a loss and totally affected the opening drive, which ended up in a turnover. They realized they can't run outside. So it seemed like they started to realize, if we're going to run him, we've got to run him between the tackles. And they really did it, so he really didn't have to cut too much. You're right. I think the field played a big role. And I know, like everybody else out there, my first thought after we saw a couple of guys fall was, oh, goodness, we're watching the Super Bowl again. And this time they came out with a victory, but it affected everything. Defensive backs couldn't plant and cut. The receivers had the advantage on everything in terms of knowing when they were going to try to break and not. And, it did. I think you're right. I think there's a lot more there that they had to decide to scrap on, as the game went on, and say, we can't do that. We can't do that. Jalen didn't have the footing when he wanted to try to run as much, so he looked slower. So I think there's a lot there, you're right, that we're going to start seeing over the next couple of weeks. But I did like overall the way the offense performed.
You gave Hurts a D. I thought you were a little harsh on him. I can understand why, I think. I thought he played a good game, not a great game. I know his two really big mistakes. I thought he made a couple bad decisions. But a D, I was a little surprised you were that hard on him.
I can't. The turnovers drove me nuts.
Yeah, I will say, Scott, I do the one in the end zone where all he has to do is throw it away, kick a field goal, and you have a 2-score game. That's inexcusable.
But I was thinking the first film thing that Kellen Moore does with him, probably as he got on the plane, is come over here. Look at this. Watch this play. 101, rule number 1 for quarterbacks in the NFL. The only one who can do it that I've seen really is Patrick Mahomes. Every rule does not apply to him. But never throw across your body back to the middle of the field. And when he did that, those are points you gave away. Even if it's 3 points, imagine how much more comfortable we are at the end of the game with an 8-point lead instead of a 5. It all matters. And not only that, it's at least 3 points, if not more. The one that he threw off his back foot in the end zone, I knew he was trying not to take a safety at that point. But again, there's another one. If you can just kind of throw it out of bounds, you live to fight another. Even if you punt, it's anything there is better than what happened.
Well, you're in field goal range. I mean, you're inside the 30-yard line, if I remember correctly.
I was talking. That last one I was talking about was the one he did early in the game where he threw it away and gave Green Bay a short field. Both of them were inexcusable. And so when you say, why did I give him a D? I did grade him a little harshly. I thought that for a guy who's in the league now, starting, paid like a franchise quarterback, to go out and start the game like that and put your defense in that kind of a hole, which they bailed him out for, you can't do that. And then later in the game, when you've got points and you're getting greedy and throwing it back across your body over the middle of the field and it's intercepted and you come away with nothing, that can't happen either. These are the kind of decisions that, and you can call it rusty if you want. This is where you can make the argument they need to play in the preseason, because look, don't give me the whole we're doing the joint practices thing and they'll be ready. They're not live bullets coming at him. He is not going to get hit no matter how good of a rush comes at him in a joint practice.
Well, so I will. Let me interject with this. I did bring this up earlier because people were texting in, and I saw people tweeting about it or Xing about it or posting about it on Friday night. I would only rebut with this. If he would have played in the preseason, you're talking about if he played in the preseason and played in the last preseason game, which most people don't do regardless. So you're probably saying he played in a preseason game, which would have been about 4 weeks ago. I don't know that him playing a series or two 4 weeks ago would have made him any less rusty in the game.
I get that. I just feel like that first interception he threw was due to the pocket collapsing on him, and he panicked. And had he faced a live rush before,
I don't disagree with you on that. I just don't know how you like. All these teams are going. Like Jordan Love threw 2 passes in the preseason. Josh Jacobs had 1 carry. I don't know that helped. Like, I don't know what these teams are supposed to do, because if you play them and they get hurt, then you're saying, why'd you play them? And then people would say that you don't play them. Is playing a guy 4 weeks before the opener really going to do anything for him? I don't know what you do. I don't know what's the right thing and what's not. Would we all prefer to see them play? Yes. But is it really helping them out? I don't think so.
I agree with you, and it's just we have to get to the point where this, I guess, has to be okay.
Look at quarterback play around the league, Scott. The quarterback position was awful this weekend.
It was, and you're right, and it was all widespread and around the league. You're right, and I hadn't really thought about that, but you're right, and it I think is, I heard somebody say this to me. The new preseason is September.
Yep.
You really don't know what you have around the league until you get into October, and these guys are really more seasoned. That's why I think when you look at it, you're going to see every team, their biggest growth is going to be from week 1 to week 2. And you're going to see so much more of these ugly, sloppy things that happen start going away. But I just had to I just could not tolerate some of the mistakes that Jalen made. And I'm half blaming him for what happened with some of the exchanges with Cam Jurgens as well. So there's a lot to clean up there. Now, all that being said, despite the turnovers, I thought Jalen made plays when plays needed to be made. That last drive was a thing of beauty.
Yeah.
All around, the whole offense deserves credit there. And, I'm confident Jalen Hurts. I have a whole lot of faith in him and confident. I don't want anybody to read that D grade I gave him that I doubt him at all. I just expected a little bit better and cleaner performance, especially out of what we saw after what we saw last year, to try to protect the ball a little bit better than he did in the first game.
I agree with that. But I think the decisions, he made some bad decisions, but overall I thought he played a pretty good game. I hate to be, and look, I like the fact that you graded him hard. Be tough on him. I have no problem with that.
Turnovers make me sick.
And with good reason. No issue with that, Scott. No issue with that. I want to look at the defense. I thought the 2 drives in the first quarter that they got the stops on won them the game. Now, that doesn't mean the defense played great overall, but it tells me that there is a ton of room of growth with this group.
And no panic either. I mean, the way those guys, because if you think about it, right, anytime a turnover happens, the defense is sitting over there going over strategy, game plan, having meetings, being ready for when they go back on the field. And they're not expecting it to happen, with the snapping of the fingers with a turnover. They got a quick hustle on the field and be ready to go. They did it twice, and they kept them out of the end zone. And I'm with you, Mike. I said, as I was watching the game, I'm like, that's not nothing. Holding that team to 6 points after 2 turnovers on your own end of the field. It made it so the Eagles got 1 touchdown and they were in front. And imagine how deflating that is for the Packers, who had all that good stuff happen and couldn't cash in, and now all of a sudden they look up and they're behind. I agree with you in that I think that went a long way towards winning the game for the Eagles. I put stock also in that 7.5 minute drive in the fourth quarter. But the defense kept them in the game early when the offense couldn't figure out who it was and what it was doing. And that was not nothing. It was impressive. And there's a lot of positives to build off of, for me, with that, play, the way that the defense played in that game. There's a lot of things they've got to clean up, just like the offense, but I saw a lot of good things too.
97.3 ESPN.com. Grayson's grades. They are up posted on the website after every Eagles game. More defensive looks here. Am I supposed to believe that Zach Bond is a potential defensive player of the year? I mean, that was one of the best performances for an Eagle defensive player since we've been doing this segment. He should have got an A double plus.
I mean, like when you looked around on every play, it's like, oh my God, there's Bond again. he was in the frame if he didn't make the tackle. He was he played with, the NFL players talk a lot about the speed of the game. When they're playing well, it's a slow game. When they're not, they're confused. It's a fast game, and they're trying to keep up. He looked like he had that game running in slow motion because he knew where to go, where to be, and what to do. And he finished tackles. We talk about slop and rust and things like that in week one. Tackling is usually one of the things that is not very good in week one. He did a great job bringing guys down to the ground and making some plays and helping them stop. He was a big factor in that early success we talked about where they kept the Packers out of the end zone on those two possessions. Look, there's a lot of pluses and positives to take out of Zach Bond. And now that you did it, Zach, the question is, can you be counted on to be this kind of player consistently? And frankly, Mike, I like the way that he and Nakobe Dean were working together. It looked like they had some chemistry too. So I'm optimistic about the linebacker play, which is one of the places where we all went into the season going, I really don't know what to expect out of this group.
Yeah, I thought, Dean was uneven. I thought he made some splash plays. I thought he made some good plays. And then against the run, I thought he struggled, kind of an involvement. We'll see what happens when White is ready to go. There was so much – that was a weird situation last week. So let's go to Grayson's grades. Let's take a look at Jalen Carter and that defensive front. Not a lot of edge rush in the game, although I thought the field maybe played. But the two guys in the middle I thought did a good job.
Yeah, I think they played a big role in those two possessions early in the game. Anytime that the Packers tried to run up the middle, they did a pretty good job of helping to fill those holes. And to that, I think Jordan Davis deserved a little bit of credit there as well. He's still not the flashy, making some of the flash plays I want to see him make, but I thought it was a positive step in the right direction, the way he and Carter were working together. You mentioned the edge rushes. I really believe the footing played a big role in that because at one point I'm like, where is Bryce Huff? Where is anybody on the outside to get in there and create some pressure? Because they were getting pressure up the middle. They just weren't finishing it on the edges. And, and to the credit of Jalen Carter and Jordan Davis and the guys in the middle, the one possession that the Packers moved the ball on the ground, I don't know if you noticed, it was runs all to the outside. They gave up on running up the middle and went outside and found success, and the Eagles then had to correct that and set an edge. I was pleased with the guys up the middle. I think that they played well, and I look forward to seeing where they can go and, again, continue to improve and work together. But I love watching Jalen Carter rush the quarterback, man. That guy can make some guys move. He can create havoc. He gets in the quarterback's face, and he makes an impact. And I see a lot of Fletcher Cox in him in the sense that you never saw Fletcher Cox really. He'd have a game here and there where he jumped off the stat page at you, but his box score did not tell the story of what kind of player he was in a game. I think Jalen Carter is that way. He makes a big impact on the game, but you don't see it so much in the box score directly under his name.
Scott Grayson's grades are up at 97.3ESPN.com after every Eagles game. And, of course, he'll be back after every Eagles game to break them all down. It's Eagles and the Falcons next week. And we'll get Grayson's grades after that game right here on the Sports Bash. All right, Scott, we appreciate it as always. Good year. Hopefully coming ahead for the 2024 season. Gets off to a good start. Good grades, man.
Yeah, thank you. A lot of fun. Always enjoy it. Look forward to doing it again this year.
All right, there's Scott. And, of course, you can check him out on Fox 29 and right here on Grayson's Grades. Go to the website for the grades over at 97.3ESPN.com. All right, plenty more to come here on the Sports Bash Live, 97.3 ESPN. We are at the Fanatics Sportsbook in the gallery at Ocean Casino Resort in Atlantic City. I'm Mike Gill, and of course, there's so much more to get to. McMullen tonight at 5 o'clock will join us. We got football at 4 coming up at 4 o'clock today here on the Sports Bash on 97.3 ESPN. What was the biggest reason for the Eagles' success? We still have that to come. And Saquon Barkley wasn't the only Eagle to start offensively. All that and more on the Sports Bash on 97.3 ESPN.
We wear our work day by day, stitch by stitch. At Dickies, we believe work is what we're made of. So whether you're gearing up for a new project or looking to add some tried and true workwear to your collection, remember that Dickies has been standing the test of time for a reason. Their workwear isn't just about looking good. It's about performing under pressure and lasting through the toughest jobs. Head over to Dickies.com and use the promo code WORKWEAR20 at checkout to save 20% on your purchase. It's the perfect time to experience the quality and reliability that has made Dickies a trusted name for over a century.
With Mike Gill.
Do I have everybody's attention now?
On 97.3 ESPN and the 97.3 ESPN free mobile app.
All right, 3:53 Sports Bash. We're live at the Fanatic Sportsbook at the Gallery at Ocean Casino Resort in Atlantic City. This hour is brought to you by Broadleaf's Plumbing, Heating, Cooling, Air Conditioning. We got plenty of text messages. Let's fire off a couple before we get to football at 4.
Justin from Galloway says, hey, Mike, happy Monday. I'm pleasantly content with the Eagles' play. Quenya and Mitchell looked very good. Bourne looked great. And I loved Barkley and the receivers. We are a 12-win team, mark my words, from Justin and Galloway.
A lot of that's right. I thought Mitchell had a great game. I thought Mitchell was the most impressive rookie that I have seen play for the Eagles in quite some time, that I said, this kid can play. Like, I left that game saying, this dude has it. Whatever it is, he has it. Now, next week he might give up 2 touchdowns and people might blast me. That guy has it, I think, regardless. He can play. You saw last night, Terrion Arnold had a rough night at the office.
Nick from Atlantic City says, Hurts is definitely an average quarterback. He's elevated by the talent around him. He should have been picked off 5 times on Friday night, and he needs to learn that throwing the ball to the other team is a bad idea.
He played not very good in terms of the decision making. I'll give him that. We have seen, I don't know how people say that in terms of if you watch the guy play in 2022, you would say he has the ability to be a great player. If he was consistently average, I would say Nick is right. He has shown that he is better than the player he was last night. It sounds like Nick's one of those guys that was, I told you 2 years ago he couldn't play, and now wants to try to act like he was the guy who told you 2 years ago he couldn't play, but probably looked like an idiot in 2022. A lot of those people out there. Football at 4, Jeff Mosher is coming up next.
97.3 ESPN presents The Sports Bash with Mike Gill. It's time for Football at 4, powered by the Inside the Birds podcast.
Just hungry to bring back another Lombardi to Philly. The fans deserve it. Our team deserves it. Culture begs for it.
Now live, this is Football at 4.
Football at 4, powered by the Inside the Birds podcast, is brought to you by Bet365. Whatever the sport, whatever the moment, it's never ordinary at Bet365. Mike Gill, Jeff Mosher is here. We are live inside the Fanatic Sportsbook at Ocean Casino Resort, inside the Gallery in Atlantic City, a 12,000 square foot gaming bar experience, and it is the centerpiece of this unbelievable facility. And we are here every Monday, and Jeff Mosher is here on Mondays for another edition of Football at 4 on the Sports Bash. Now, Moshe, was 2 days ago, or Sunday, Saturday, I guess 3 days ago that it all happened, but there's so much to unpack from the game, and everybody's talking about Saquon Barkley. Did he exceed your expectations?
In some areas he did, Mike. The wheel route touchdown that he caught was really phenomenal, and it's not that we didn't think Saquon Barkley could catch passes, but if you go look at his career mostly, it's dump-offs, right? It might be like mid-range passes, route running, and the ability to make that adjustment mid-air to catch that ball. That's special. You don't see that at a lot of even really good running backs. So that was really impressive to see. Some of the other runs where he did show burst, no. I mean, that's what you get with Saquon Barkley. I felt like there were about 2 or 3 runs, though, where it's called getting skinny through the hole, where you don't see a great lane. Like the touchdown he scored, great jump cut and all, but that was a huge wide lane. Mike, you might have been able to run through it if you could juke the safety the way he did. But other runs, a couple others, he kind of was able to say get skinny through the hole. It's like you tighten your body, you use your speed and athleticism to find that crease, and you hit the hole quickly and get the game. I thought he did that fairly well 2 or 3 times as well.
Yeah, I know. Obviously, they create this offense, and you're thinking about how they're going to do it. What's Kellen Moore's offense going to look like here? How's it going to be different from what they did in the past? Well, I want to get your hypothesis, because a lot of the talk is about motion, and that was one of the key things here. Kellen Moore's new look offense for the Eagles, we saw it on Friday night. Jalen Hurts, motion. Philadelphia used motion 51% of their plays, the highest rate in a game since 2021. Hurts had a QBR of 81.9 when they used motion. Without motion, 9.3. Mm-hmm. What do you make of those numbers?
Yeah, I make of it that the motion did its job. It worked. They used it a lot. Now, they used it in mostly out of shotgun formations, mostly in the passing game. That's where it helped them the most, as you mentioned. Jalen Hurts' QBR, it was up. So that was good signs. I mean, this is what we felt the offense needed after last year. It needed fresh concepts. They were the fewest. They ran the fewest motion in the league last year, and I think even the year before. So it's not a staple or even a feature of Nick Sirianni's offense. It is of Kellen Moore's, and you saw not just on the Saquon touchdown, but they brought in Will Shipley in that 2 running back formation, used him in motion to get Devontae Smith open on the left side in his zone. I mean, they used it as much as they could, and it clearly helped. So that was a good thing because, Jalen Hurts hasn't seen that a lot, and we were all wondering, would motion be something that he could adapt and adjust to? Would it benefit him? Would he be able to do what he wanted to do with all the moving parts? Because sometimes it bothers quarterbacks. Kirk Cousins is in sort of a Shanahan-style offense now down in Atlanta, and he's a guy who's used to being under center quite a bit, at least more than most quarterbacks, and they didn't do that a lot, and you kind of saw that Atlanta offense struggle, and you wonder, is that not a great fit for their quarterback? So it was good to see that the motion itself and the concepts worked and that it helped Jalen Hurts move the chains when he needed to.
I was going to say, 34 points. Did you think that the offense could have actually been better?
Yes, 100%. I do think it can be better. I think they can be a more consistent running team. I think that, I think we're going to have to re-examine our discussion as the season goes on of the zone reads, the quarterback keepers, because obviously Green Bay defended them really well. They packed the box. They almost tried to force Jalen Hurts into those situations. They were able to do that and then be able to stop Jalen Hurts from those design runs hurting them. In fact, I think that they were really happy with how they defended those and put the Eagles behind the sticks a couple of times because of it. I think first down passing, the numbers aren't great. And I would say in third down offense overall, they only converted 29% on third down. Like, you're not going to win a lot of games where you convert 29% third down, you have more turnovers than your opponent, and you have fewer offensive yards than your opponent. But that's what the Eagles did. So some of that is a little bit of luck, right? So I do think there's definitely room for the offense to get better in some areas.
Jeff Mosher, Football at 4 from the Inside the Birds podcast. We're asking people what's a word you would use to describe Jalen Hurts. I said he was kind of uneven. I thought he played well about 85% of the game. He made a couple bad decisions, but those bad decisions are ones that cost you in the big moments. You got to erase them. But for the most part, these people that said, he didn't play well, I think that's going a little too far. Do you agree or disagree?
No, I wouldn't say he didn't play well. I would say he certainly made mistakes. I think Jordan Love is a guy you look at, and you could equally say, he made some really good throws, but he also didn't play well. I mean, if you go to the third quarter, after they score on the Christian Watson touchdown, they got 2 3-and-outs in a row from the Eagles offense. And both times, the Packer offense was stalled because Jordan Love missed a wide open guy, whether it was Romeo Doubs or Jaden Reed. I mean, Jaden Reed was 20 yards open in the middle of his zone, and the ball got thrown at his feet, right? So, but does that mean Jordan Love had a terrible game? No, I thought Jordan Love also made some really good throws, too. To describe Jalen's game, Mike, to me, I would say he has the ability, and we've seen this before, to be good to average for a couple of quarters, and then in the fourth quarter, and we saw this a lot last year in the 10-1 start, just put a cape on, right? And, he didn't run the ball well until the fourth quarter, where he had a few scrambles that were backbreaking, and all of a sudden he's hitting Devontae Smith on third down with some really precise throws. So he helped them win the game. He made great plays in the second half and the fourth quarter to help them win. That's what you need your quarterback to do. So, yes, did he make mistakes? Yes. Was there uneven plays? Sure. But I wouldn't quite say he was a liability for the team.
I'll give you some of the names, the words that have been coming in. Inconsistent, shaky, roller coaster, sufficient, adequate, meh. So it doesn't sound like a lot of people were all that impressed with Hurts. I thought the two interceptions, especially the one down in the end zone, Jeff, you got points on the board if you just throw that ball away, and the points on the board extend your lead to a 2-score game. That's an inexcusable one, right? That one to me is you've got to know time and score better than to make that decision.
100%. So, I think it's fair to say some of those adjectives like inconsistent or shaky, it's kind of rough for a team that had over 400 yards. I mean, it's not like he didn't make really important plays, especially some really nice throws to A.J. Brown. He made 2 throws, Mike, that a lot of quarterbacks don't make. Not the touchdown to A.J. Brown, but there was the play where he was sort of getting hit by a free rusher, and he just hung in there and made a great throw to Brown on the left side for first down. I think it was 3rd and 8, if I'm not mistaken. That's a heck of a throw. He made another one where he got rid of the ball to Saquon Barkley on the left side. It was Saquon's other catch that wasn't the touchdown, where, again, he was under some pressure and needed to find a target and did. And, did Daniel Jones make that play? I know that shouldn't be the measuring stick. I get that. But my point is he made some special plays throughout the game, and I think you have to give him credit. I get that we tend to look at the negative sometimes more than the positive, and I get that he did make mistakes that you don't want a veteran quarterback to make, so I agree with some of the inconsistent or shaky, but I do think you have to give him credit for making the really important plays that also help them win the game.
So what would you say about Kellen Moore's debut? I mean, you would think that there's way more peels of the onion from him as well. So what did you if you were to kind of give him a review here about Moore and then how what you could see kind of moving forward, building off of this night?
Definitely got the job done. He came as advertised. That was the expression that I used in the pod this morning. I mean, we expected to see formational diversity. We expected to see trips, bunch, motion, misdirection. And we did. We saw it all, and it yielded positive results for the most part. There's areas to improve. They were not very good when they were operating under center, which is usually a big part of Kellen Moore's offense, and they were not very good out of the pistol. That doesn't mean it's his fault. I mean, he's learning, right, what his team is good at and what it's not good at, and you can't just run one variation of a play all the time, too. You've got to be able to do some of these things. But, you just have to have the right balance of it, and you have to put your team in position to succeed. And I think for the most part, he did that. It looked like there were answers. Now, the Packers here's what surprised me, Mike. The Packers did not come after Jalen Hurts.
They blitzed 9 times. As I thought. They blitzed 9 times.
And guess what? Those 9 blitzes were not the house, right? It was like one extra man, like 5. When you're rushing 5 against a 5-man offensive line, yeah, it's a blitz, but it's not an extra man, right? So I was a bit surprised on that from the new defensive coordinator. Maybe that's something that he'll rethink today. But we'll see if Kellen Moore has more answers for a team that's going to be a little bit more aggressive with him. And that might be Monday night with Raheem Morris's defense in Atlanta, in Philadelphia, but against Atlanta.
Real quick, I mean, obviously Brown had the bigger night because he had the big play, but I thought Smith made some of the key plays in the game late that it felt like when they needed a catch, that was the guy they went to.
Yeah, I agree. I think he had more catches, right, than A.J. Brown. If you go look, probably more third down catches as well. And I love the aggression on second down on a final drive to throw the slant to him as you're trying to, put a few more points on the board to edge that out. I mean, that was the guy he went to, Devontae Smith. And I think it's going to be like that. I honestly, because partly of Kellen Moore's offense and how versatile receivers who line up outside and inside, like CeeDee Lamb, Keenan Allen, have flourished in it, I've been saying with you for quite a while, I think Devontae Smith could have an even better year than the last 2 years, which you automatically expect a little bit of improvement, but I mean, it could be like one of those sort of breakout years.
The offensive line, too. I mean, Becton, there was some questions there, and also the center spot. Those were the two spots that everybody was wondering. No Kelsey, and then Becton getting his first snaps at right guard. How did that work out?
You know what? Pretty good. Now, again, not a lot of pressure, so, you're just basically blocking your man straight up. But, he was going up against Kenny Clark, who's good. And I'll give you a little, I don't know how many people are talking about this today. The Saquon Barkley wheel route touchdown that we just talked about before, the Packers actually blitzed on that. And the way that's a slow developing play, right? Jalen has to roll to his right. He has to fake it first. Then Saquon's got to roll out. There's got to be the motion into the play. But that play was made possible because Juergens, so the left guard pulled, Dickerson pulled. So Juergens had to take the left defensive tackle, and Becton then had to leave his man, the right defensive tackle, and take on the blitzer, and then Lane had to take on Becton's guy. So my point is, you need that kind of communication. I don't know if they were expecting a blitz there, but with a guard pulling, they all needed to switch off their men, and they did it very well to give Jalen Hurts just enough time to be able to make that throw. So I was really impressed with Becton being able to do that, being able to handle, the tapping the center, in his first time playing right guard. There were a couple of runs where I thought he double teamed on. So I don't want to sit here and tell you that this is going to work and it's great because, we can never make too much off one game. But it's Kenny Clark. So it was a good debut for Mekhi Becton, and hopefully something that they can build on.
Yeah, obviously you had the one center. Actually, you had two. You had the Juergens. He snapped it early, hit Hurts in the chest, and then there was a exchange on the sideline. And then there was what'd you think of the tush push? They didn't get it once, and then on the goal line they didn't. The snap was they didn't get. So is that something that might be finding its way out of the offense?
I think I might be tempted to just give the ball to Saquon Barkley and still I don't think the tush push could go away because it's so effective. I just think that they got to keep working on it, drilling it in practice. I think Cam Juergens has to develop that sort of veteran savvy about the way Jason Kelce used to manipulate the ball a little bit at the snap there for that to happen. But, you should still be able to get it. You still have a lot of beef up on that offensive line. So,
talk with Jeff Mosher. Let's go to the defense. Vic Fangio. I said earlier, Jeff, I thought the defense won them the game. Now, they didn't play great, but those two stops they got in the first quarter, that's the difference in the game. They're giving up the field goals here. So what'd you think of Vic Fangio's unit overall in his first night?
Yeah, I can see how you can make that argument. Certainly those red zone stops that they had early on came out to be critical. There were, we mentioned a couple of the drops in the middle of the field. Obviously in the red zone there was that ball that Moro Ojomo did an excellent job rushing Love into a high pass to Dobbs right there. I think it was the third quarter, and it was out of his reach. Christian Watson should have had one, but he slipped. So defense got a little bit lucky too, and obviously they have to tighten up their run defense. Now I watched it today, and I don't think it was a gap integrity issue. So I don't know if that's a positive or a negative. If it's a gap problem and guys are confused and not in the right spot, you can say, all right, well, that's correctable. If it's guys just not able to get off blocks, you go, uh-oh, right? And that's kind of what I saw, guys just not being able to get off blocks against certain runs, and then just bad tackling. But, Mike, we always see bad tackling for the first 3 weeks of the season. I know the Eagles practice longer. I know they practice harder, but they're still not hitting like the Chiefs hit and other teams that hit. So you're going to see that probably. And listen, Monday night might be a little rough with Bijan Robinson and Algier, and they're going to run, and they're going to run out of different formations because that's what the Shanahan style offense is all about. So it'll be a pretty big test for the Eagles defense to see if they are better.
You did get a lot of that. I want to get your thoughts, Huff. I was not a big fan of the signing, and I know a lot of people, Friday night, if you were watching, a lot of people would not have seen him because he was non-existent in the game. What do you make of Huff from that first game? Concern or not really? He'll be fine.
What number is Huff wearing again? Remind me.
Yes, a 0.
Yeah. I think you just said it best.
He is wearing number 0.
Yeah, and I think that was the same as his input on the stat sheet, to be honest with you. You didn't get much out of him.
Nothing. You got nothing. In fact, at one point of the game, Blackledge, who was doing the game, said, you haven't heard of Bryce Huff. It was in the that was the first and only time he was mentioned the entire night to tell us that you hadn't heard about him at all.
I know. It was like an offensive lineman. They say it's not good if you hear his name. That's what it was like for Bryce Huff, but he wasn't the only one. I mean, I know Josh Sweat was able to draw a holding against Rasheed Walker, the left tackle, and gave him a little work at times, but I think just one quarterback hit, and you didn't get much from anything from Nolan Smith either. And what was interesting was Brandon Graham played more snaps than Nolan Smith and I think Bryce Huff.
And Huff.
So, yeah, well, but in fairness, Brandon Graham also actually, I didn't realize this until I watched it today, played some snaps on the interior as well. So it's not like those guys were coming off and he was coming on. But the bottom line is he did play more snaps than them, and none of your edge rushers really produced that well, which is
no, not at all.
Something we talked about. Yeah, big concern.
Yeah, the edge rushers, had a rough day at the office, and obviously Bryce Huff he got paid a lot of money to come here and kind of replace Hassan Reddick, and you did not get any impact there. I got to get to Baun, though. That might have been one of the best defensive performances from a player, period, in all the time we've done this together, Jeff. I don't know that you can depend on that, but, man, the way they used him and what he brought to the table, either the Saints completely whiffed on him or he just had one of those nights.
Yeah, this is one where I'm really interested to see the larger sample size, because when I watched it, rewatched it, I saw what you just said. Good range, good instincts, fast to the ball, swarm to the ball, and really the most important contribution he made, carrying the three there, running with Musgrave, I think it was, the slot flex tight end. That forced Jordan Love. He tried to force the ball in anyway, and then Reed Blankenship undercut the route and picked it off. That was great. That was fantastic to see your linebacker run with a tight end like that. That's a good 10. So, and then just have the understand where to be in his drop. So very good. But, when I did look at those Josh Jacobs runs and those Emmanuel Wilson runs, a couple of them, he's not the culprit, but he's one of the 2 or 3 guys not getting off his block either, So I want a bigger sample size, but of course, to your point, for a guy who never played the position before, very, very encouraging to see him showcase those skills that he did showcase.
I'd love to hear your thoughts on Dean, because it's funny. I had one of my buddies texting me that he stinks. I had another guy texting me, Dean's great. I mean, you talk about a guy who was all over the map. I thought he was like Jalen Hurts. He had some splash plays that stood out that if you were kind of just observing, you're like, he's making some plays. And then, against the run, I thought he had a rough time. What'd you think of Nakobe Dean's night?
Yeah, exactly. Early first quarter, we talked about some of those red zone stops, right? Some of those Josh Jacobs runs that they were hoping inside the 5 or 10 to get into the end zone. Well, Dean did a really good job of sneaking through some gaps and making some plays there. And I'm like, all right. I saw like 3, 4, 5 maybe plays where he got downhill, got into his gap, and made the play. No doubt about it. Also saw a couple of those runs, like I mentioned with Baun and others, where he did not make a play or was blocked out. Not the biggest guy in the world, so you can't have offensive linemen on him. And then there were a few times in coverage. I think the big one on the left side, I can't remember, was it Jaden Reed, who was wide open and caught the ball and sort of caught Nakobe Dean out of place there in his zone drop. So that's kind of what we've come to expect a little bit with the Eagles linebackers, is that they're going to give you certain things well, and then other areas they're going to get exploited, and we did see that.
The last guy I want to get your take on is Mitchell. My take for Mitchell was he can play. He might get beat here or there somewhere, But he showed me that this guy is cocky, confident, and he can play in this league. I think they found something in Mitchell that they can be very confident that they hit on.
Yeah, I was encouraged. Like you said, physical player. That, first of all, just being a physical corner, I think for an Eagles corner, has to be impressive to the fan who's watched such a long time off coverage or a guy seemingly not stepping up to the challenge. So really happy with that. Did he give up a couple of, catches in yards? Yeah, of course. They targeted him because he's a rookie, and they know that. So, and that's going to happen. But I think it's a good foundation. Had a couple of breakups. Had a big one on the left side to, I think, Christian Watson. And he also had, I guess he was credited with a breakup where really Dobbs beat him on an out route and Love threw it to the inside shoulder instead of the outside shoulder. So Mitchell was able to get his hands on it, which is great. Good job by Mitchell. But, 9 times out of 10, when Love's having a better game or a quarterback having a better game, they're going to make that play against him. But he made the play when it was there to be made, and that's a great thing.
Jeff Mosher, week 1 is in the books. The Eagles will play next Monday night, so a week from tonight right here on 97.3 ESPN. They host the Atlanta Falcons, and, of course, we'll have plenty more on that game, getting you ready for it, and a look back at this game. Check out the Inside the Birds podcast. The guys break down that game as more is looking forward to what happens next with this offense. I thought that field was a factor. They scored 34, and we'll see the next evolution of it next week here on week 2, already week 2. Unbelievable. But the game tonight, you can listen to Monday Night Football on 97.3 ESPN, Jets and Niners. Jeff Mosher's back on Wednesday as we get ready for week number 2. All right, buddy. We'll talk to you then.
All right, Mike. Thanks.
All right, Moshe is here for Football at 4, and Football at 4 is brought to you by Bet365. Whatever the moment, whatever the sport, it's never ordinary at Bet365. I'm Mike Gill. This is the Sports Bash live on 97.3 ESPN. Coming up, Nick's Nuggets, another edition with Nick Earnshaw. We are live at the Fanatics Sportsbook at the Gallery Bar Book and Games at Ocean Casino Resort in Atlantic City. They've got so much going on, man. Monday Night Football here tonight. They got all the fights, UFC, the big boxing match. What's Canelo Alvarez, I think, is fighting. When is that fight? That next weekend? Big UFC card coming up. Monday Night Football. Then Thursday Night Football. And don't forget, Friday, we're live at Charlie's in Summers Point for another Happy Hour Friday. 15 years of the Sports Bash. We're on the road. Another Happy Hour Friday. This Friday, Charlie's in Summers Point. Come on out and see us. Phil's, by the way, playing Tampa tonight. Got a lineup on that game yet? All right. Thanks for the lineup. All right. I will get you the lineup here in just a second. There we go. Schwarber, Turner, Harper, Castellanos, Stott, Marsh, Clements, Rojas, Stubbs. Sanchez gets the start tonight. There's your lineup for the Phillies. Schwarber, Turner, Harper, Castellanos, Stott, Marsh, Clements, Rojas, and Stubbs. Your Phillies lineup here on the Sports Bash. All right, Knicks Nuggets are coming up next.
We wear our work day by day, stitch by stitch. At Dickies, we believe work is what we're made of. So, whether you're gearing up for a new project or looking to add some tried and true workwear to your collection, remember that Dickies has been standing the test of time for a reason. Their workwear isn't just about looking good. It's about performing under pressure and lasting through the toughest jobs. Head over to Dickies.com and use the promo code WORKWEAR20 at checkout to save 20% on your purchase. It's the perfect time to experience the quality and reliability that has made Dickies a trusted name for over a century.
Mike Gill.
And I am the voice of the voiceless.
On 97.3 ESPN and the 97.3 ESPN free mobile app.
At 4:32 on a Sports Bash Monday, we're live at the Fanatics Sportsbook in the Gallery Bar Book and Games at Ocean Casino Resort. Yes, the Eagles win 1-0. They beat the Green Bay Packers. Many people thought the Packers have Super Bowl aspirations. Now, if Jordan Love is out for any extended period of time, I would imagine their NFC North chances have gone out the window just a little bit. But if Love is back, I said before, last year they were 9-8. They could be another one of those 9-8 teams again, and then get to now it's going to be tricky getting into the playoffs. Malik Willis for the next couple of weeks here, but let's get this edition of Nick's Nuggets to you here on the Sports Bash Live on 97.3 ESPN. They're brought to you by the Ocean Casino Resort in Atlantic City, right here at the Fanatic Sportsbook. What's up, Nick?
What's going on, Mike? Nice to see you. Fun weekend, busy weekend overall on the sports calendar. First week of football. Eagles get the W on Friday, but it wasn't completely pretty to win that game against the Packers on Friday night. And, we asked the question of the day, Mike. What is a word to describe Jalen Hurts' performance? For me, it was rusty. That's what he looked like. It just looked like he didn't have enough reps. That's essentially, to me, all that I could think of when I think about Jalen Hurts' performance on Friday. It just looked like there wasn't enough reps in the preseason. They didn't play. Like, they're only in practice. They're getting those, practices with other teams. That's fine and all, but sometimes you need reps to feel the game action. You're not going to get them in practice in the preseason game. You're feeling a guy pressure you, right? It looked rusty. It looked like he had not played in a while. That's essentially the takeaway I have from Jalen Hurts' performance. Now, he made some big throws, big time plays to eventually eke out the victory. But I would say rusty is the perfect word to describe Hurts' performance on Friday night.
Rusty's not bad. I thought the weekend of quarterback play in the NFL was bad overall. So I don't know what the fixes for that. I know a lot of people talk about preseason games. I don't think Jalen Hurts playing in the preseason changes that. Quite frankly, the last preseason game he would have played in would probably be 3 or 4 weeks ago. He wasn't going to play in the last preseason game, right, which was the third one. That was Saturday, the 24th of August. So let's say he played in that game. You're talking about August 24th would have been the last time he played in the game. They played on September 6th, so that's about 2 weeks. I don't know if that's helping him play. So I don't know what you do about the rusty factor other than you got to play, you got to get the rust off. He did that, and they won. So you take that and say, look, he's only going to build off of that game that he played on Friday night.
It's the phenomenon, though, of not playing in the preseason, right? Like, we've seen it over the past couple of years. The product of the NFL just has not been, it's been subpar when you start the season. The first couple of weeks over the past few years, it's been subpar for the most part from the quarterback. We saw it on Sunday. The quarterback play wasn't great because a lot of these quarterbacks are not getting reps in the preseason. I think that's a massive factor as to why we're seeing these guys struggle early on in the season. It happened last year and it happened again this year. It was kind of predictable. You knew this was probably going to happen. It might be some rough football to watch at first in week 1, 2, 3. Then you start getting the swing of things and you can knock the rust off, right? The whole purpose of the preseason was to knock the rust off and get reps, to get you prepared for the season. That's going out the window because everyone's so worried about injuries, things of that nature. And that's why week 1, 2, and 3 are essentially turning into the old preseason.
Yeah, everybody's doing it. It's not like the Eagles came up with this novel idea to not play guys in the preseason. When the Rams won that Super Bowl and did not play anybody in the preseason, everybody followed suit. They said, we cannot afford to get someone hurt in a game that doesn't mean anything, and we will take our chances. Now, everybody jumped on board. So you have a bunch of teams. Like Jordan Love played in the preseason. He threw 2 passes. Did that get him prepared for the season? Come on.
No. And that's what I mean. Like, they're not even getting a drive. Like, you used to see quarterbacks and starters play a half in one of the preseason games.
When there was
You're not going to see it anymore.
When there was 4 preseason games, the first game, they would play a series, and then that was it. The second game, they might play 2 series. The third game, they would play a half. And then the fourth game, they wouldn't play at all. And then it just kind of was like the first one, they might play a series, and then that's all they played. Now they're just not playing at all. These teams are saying we have too much invested in these players. We can't get them hurt in these preseason games. Because if they get somebody hurt, the fan base is saying, why are you playing them in the preseason? Then the other side says they have to play in the preseason. I really just don't see how playing in a half of a preseason game 4 weeks before the season starts is going to change anything.
I think it would make a little bit of a difference because you're seeing the game at full speed. If they just played a little bit more in the preseason, like a drive or two, just to see it and feel it a little bit, instead of just going out there blind and not playing for a whole year, I think it would make a little bit of a difference. But it's a copycat league. You're seeing it across the National Football League. It's not just the Eagles. It's happened for a while. Like you said, when the Rams won that Super Bowl and Sean McVay kind of implemented that and they saw it work, you saw everyone else do it, because what is the NFL? A copycat league, and you're just seeing it across the board. But that's why the product as a whole is kind of come down a little bit in the first couple of weeks of the season. And, no different with the Eagles, even though they get the win. Jalen Hurts did some really good things, but in the beginning of the game, it was like, whoa, all these turnovers. You can tell this guy hasn't played in a little while.
Yeah, listen, it was turnovers everywhere. The whole league had bad quarterback play. It was a bad product as always, but we love it. I mean, it's
there's nothing better.
There was, Dallas looked good yesterday. I mean, they played well. I mean, that's a good Cleveland defense, and they kind of pushed them around. Trying to think who else stood out yesterday. I mean, you watched the game last night. You saw some rustiness from both those teams as well. So, hey, listen, I know we all want things the way they used to be. The preseason's not coming back. They're not. In fact, it's going to go from 3 games down to 2 at some point.
Yeah, and then I wouldn't be shocked if at some point it just gets eliminated completely. I mean, down the line in the coming years, would not shock me one bit if it got eliminated completely. But that's that. Nugget number 1. We'll move on to nugget number 2. We got to talk about Zach Baun, Mike. I mean, this guy was flying all over the field. I was genuinely surprised because we've talked about linebacker a ton, right? And we were not really knowing what to expect from these linebackers, from the Kobe Dean, from Zach Baun. No Devin White. He's hurt. You didn't really know what you're going to get. They were getting killed across the middle a little bit. I will say that. Across the middle, they couldn't really stop anything. But Zach Baun overall, he played really well. He played inside linebacker. He played edge in a couple of snaps. He played at corner. He was all over the place. And, is someone who Zach Baun didn't get a great opportunity with the Saints for the first couple of years of his career. He's finally getting that opportunity here. He found himself around the ball the entire game. That was one of the big takeaways that I had from Friday night's game. Zach Baun was massive. If you can get that kind of production weekly out of him and consistently, they may have found something.
Well, if you get that kind of production out of him, he's going to be the defensive player of the year. I mean, come on. He was on that. I said it was one of the best performances I've seen from an Eagles player individually that I can remember. I mean, he was everywhere. He was all over the place on Friday night. He had, 15 tackles, 2 sacks. I mean, he just seemingly made every play. It was apropos that he ends the game with the sack there. Either the Saints severely missed on this guy or he just had one of those nights. I don't know what to make of it, because there's no way that the Eagles just found some random guy that's been in the league. It's not like he hasn't played. He's been in this league. I have a hard time thinking that he's going to reshape this defense, but if they got that level of play from him, that's a difference maker.
Yeah, that's a massive, massive steal.
I'm not buying that they got that level of player. He had a really good game. I don't know that that's something I'm counting on.
No, I'm not counting on him to have 15 tackles, 2 sacks every single week. That would be unreal if that were to happen. But, maybe sometimes you have these type of guys who just need a change of scenery, right? Wasn't getting a gigantic opportunity with the Saints. He's getting a chance to really start here and show what he's made of. Now, Green Bay is a good team, and he did it against a really good opponent. This is an opportunity. Maybe he can build off this. You give a guy a little bit of confidence, he could turn this into something really good this season. Maybe you did find that diamond in the rough. Maybe Howie Roseman is a genius after all, right? Finding guys like Zach Baun from a position they have neglected over the years. And if Zach Baun is a guy who can surprise like that and do it somewhat to a consistent level, they're going to be okay linebacker, barring any type of injuries, especially when they can get Devin White back.
Well, we'll see what happens with Devin White. I think that's going to be a story moving forward here. Does he automatically go back into the lineup? I'm not. Right. I would say not so fast on that.
Yeah, I wouldn't say that either, because if Zach Baun's going to play that good, Devin White, what are you going to get out of him? He didn't have a great year last year with Tampa Bay. We'll see if he comes back and gets a lot more snaps.
If Devin White comes back, it would have been him and Baun together. Dean is essentially Dean and White are the two guys that are in the battle here. Bond has that other job. So do we think that White will replace Dean on the field? That's the question.
Yeah, because if you look at Zach Bond, according to PFF, he played 47 of his snaps inside the box as an inside linebacker, 13 on the edge, and another 6 at slot corner. So that's according to PFF. They had him all over. And Vic Fangio, he's going to want to get creative with Bond. So I wonder how creative they'll get with the snaps Devin White takes when he comes back in the lineup. I don't know if we'll take all of Nakobe Dean's snaps, but I wonder how creative he'll get with those guys.
Yeah, again, I don't know that Devin White is coming back to the lineup and getting snaps.
I don't know either. It's going to be interesting to see if they actually will bring him back and give him legitimate playing time. Because he was the big name. Everyone's like, "Oh, Devin White can be an Eagle." He hasn't really lived up to expectation from what he was before. So
not everyone. I was not. I did not. A
lot of people were excited.
The signing. Yeah, well, that's why they should listen to this show.
Exactly.
You get the facts here. You don't get the hyperbole. You get the facts here. I told you, Devin White will not be a factor in this defense.
Yeah, so we'll see what happens when he comes back, if he gets a lot of playing time. Zach Bond, he's for sure going to get some playing time over the next couple of weeks after his week one performance.
Listen, Bond was not – the defense was Bond and many people thought White. Bond was not the guy who was in peril here. It's White and Dean that were battling. And if you listen to the show the last 3 weeks, we kept telling you, John McMullen was on here saying he thinks that Dean will take over that spot from White. So if the guy whose playing time would be cut into is not Bond, it is Dean. Now, some people, that's what makes this interesting, because some people thought Dean played well. Other people thought he didn't play so well. I thought he was kind of uneven. I just thought he was okay, not great. He made some flash play. He was like the defensive version of Jalen Hurts. Hurts made 3 plays that I thought really stood out in the bad category. Dean made 3 plays that really flashed in the good category. And then the rest of his game, he was kind of up and down. I thought he struggled against the run, and he was good in other areas. But I think, did Dean play well enough that he will prevent White from getting snaps? Because last week, when White got deemed inactive, that was on a Thursday. And then the conspiracy theories were, well, they didn't even want to play White anyway, and they tried trading him. So will White automatically get playing time or even be active when he's ready to play? That, to me, is the story.
Yeah, and I think the thing with Nakobe Dean is, for the people that thought he didn't play well, that are all on that side of the argument, is that big pick 6 that he dropped. He had something wide open. It was in his hands, and then that eventually led to a Green Bay touchdown on a big play. So I think that's why there was more of a negative connotation with Nakobe Dean from some people, just because of that big, massive play. But he was okay. He made some really good plays, and overall he was decent in Friday night's game. We'll see if he makes that pick 6 in another game. All right. Nugget number 3, we gotta go to the Phillies. So they ended the weekend terribly, Mike. I mean, they split with the Marlins, got outscored 19-6 in their last 2 games with the Marlins. It kind of got forgotten, brushed aside because of NFL coming back and the Eagles playing on Friday. But they were bad in their last 2 games, getting blown out 10-1. Like I mentioned, 19-6 in their last 2 games. Christopher Sanchez back on the mound tonight, but it kind of got overshadowed over the weekend that the Phillies didn't really do anything in Miami with no fans there.
Yeah, it was a very disappointing weekend. But I think what's more is the injuries. Sosa quietly placed on the injured list. Bohm, I thought they bungled that whole situation with Bohm. They didn't play him for about 7 games and then put him on the – yeah, they messed that up. Hayes, he's on the injured list. Not that I think that's a big loss, but it's still a player that, could be helping you. Who am I for? Oh, Real Muto. He's out right now. Now, they're not putting him on the injured list, but he's not going to play for the next couple of games. So the injuries are starting to mount up. This is where people say, well, you got to play Weston Wilson more, and you got to give Cody Clements more at-bats. When you do that, this was what happens. That's why they're not everyday players. Those are guys that you pick your spots, you get them here and there, and they produce. But when you give them more playing time, days like yesterday and Saturday start to happen a lot more. look, they got to get to the finish line healthy, and right now, that's not the case. They still have to figure out what they're doing with that fifth spot. Seth Johnson pitched yesterday, terribly, by the way. He got sent down to the minors already today. Yep. So, look, it's still going to be a little bit of a bumpy ride to the end, but there's still important, meaningful games left for them.
Yeah, and another injury. Marshawn is hurt down in AAA, so they couldn't even bring him up. They bring Garcia into the fold. They couldn't even bring Marshawn up. So, it's all over the place. It's hitting the injury bug.
Now, I think Marshawn is going to be ready to play soon.
Yeah, so but he's hurt. But he's hurt, too.
Right. And I'm saying that's why he didn't get called up this weekend. But I think he's about ready to come up soon, and you probably will see him between now and the end of the year. Right. Yeah, and look, Harper is still struggling along as well. So, yeah, this team, I think one of the biggest questions right now is, can they get to the finish line healthy? What are they going to look like?
Yeah, right now it's a massive concern. You're losing key guys into your lineup coming down the stretch here. You got Tampa Bay coming in. Christopher Sanchez on the bump tonight. We'll see if they can get back into the win column. All right, Mike, nugget number 3. 3-pack of nuggets for you today.
Well, listen, on the Phillies thing, too, you had 4 games against Miami, and you can't look back and say we did not get the number 1 seed because of that. And now you might look back, and that might be the case. You might look back and say these 4, like yesterday, you were not competitive at all. Just not a competitive effort. I don't know. We asked a question. Were you watching the Phillies yesterday, or did you go straight NFL? How did you set your Sunday up?
So me, I was straight NFL. I was red zone all day.
No Phillies at all.
Red zone all day. I checked in on the Phillies, and once it got out of hand, I was like, I'm back into red zone. I got, first week, I got to be locked in here.
So you're a red zone guy.
Yeah, I know you're not a big red zone guy at all. I love the back and forth. Oh,
so yesterday is my mother retired from her job, so we had a retirement party at my house yesterday. So I had a lot of family. I had a lot of family at my house yesterday. And I said to my girlfriend, I guarantee you, first question, do you have red zone? Right? Of course, I don't have red zone, nor do I want red zone. So my cousin, he comes over, he switches my TV, YouTube TV. He has the sign in. He signs into his name, so we have the red zone. I'm watching red zone all day yesterday, and I felt like, I said, this is the worst viewing experience I've had on Sunday football. Get this. As soon as he left my house, the first thing I did was off my TV with the red zone. The red zone stinks. Oh. You can't get dumber watching football by sitting in front of the television and watching red zone all day. It is the worst viewing experience, period. Hate it. So yesterday, my football experience was ruined. We had the Phillies game on the one TV. They got down 6-0. When I finally said, all right, we're going to move them off, and I went to the game that was on, whatever, CBS or Fox, I don't even remember. But red zone, never again.
Oh, it's a bad
banned
job.
From my house.
That's a bad. I'm going to log in. I'm going to sneak in and log in so you have it when you go in next week. You got to watch red zone again.
Red zone is banned from my house.
Brutal.
Never again.
Brutal.
All right,
never. It's on every TV.
Nick's Nuggets are brought to you by the Ocean Casino Fanatics Sportsbook at the Gallery Bar Book and Games. We'll be back again tomorrow here on the Sports Bash. All right, Nick, take care, man. All right, coming up next hour, John McMullen. He's going to break down what he saw on Friday night, what can stick and what needs to be worked on. That's all still to come next hour on the Sports Bash. We got Eagles post-game thoughts from McMullen from Birds 365, and that's coming up next here on the Sports Bash on 97.3 ESPN, the 97.3 ESPN free mobile app, and streaming live video on the X platform at Mike Gill Show.
This is the Sports Bash with Mike Gill on 97.3 ESPN and the 97.3 ESPN free mobile app. Now live from inside the Ocean Casino Resort Studio, here's Mike Gill.
On first down, this time it goes and right up the middle for a touchdown. Goes Saquon Barkley, his second touchdown of the game. One by air and one on the ground.
Oh, boy, did they part the sea that time.
Merrill Reese, Mike Quick with the call Friday night right here on 97.3 ESPN by land, by sea. And I on the other side will see Saquon Barkley for 3 touchdowns. Big night for Saquon. how much more can they expand his role? Talked to John McMullen, Birds 365. Saw the game Friday night. Saw a big night from Saquon Barkley. Now, John, I know a lot of people have been talking about how big of a role Barkley might have. Did he have a bigger impact and role Friday than maybe you thought he might have?
A little bit. He touched it 26 times, but when I always talk about run-pass ratio, it's about the game and sort of what the Eagles were trying to accomplish, and you go down to that 4-minute offense that went 7.5 minutes essentially and wrapped up the game as they siphoned off the clock. I think he had 8 touches on that drive. So, on the last drive, 18 turns into 26. And that's how quickly it can happen. That's why you got to really look at the context of these types of things. But on a given week, that's probably on the high level. But as Nick said today earlier with us, which is why I wasn't here at 3:00. You're trying to win a game, and that changes from week to week depending on what you might need. If you're behind 7 points, you might be throwing the football more. And they were trying to drain the clock, and they were able to do it successfully. So that kind of skewed the final number if you're just looking at the box score.
Yeah, obviously Barkley got a lot of the praise after the game. He had a great night in terms of the rushing yards, but and by the way, he had 2 catches in the game, and he had some flash plays as well. A.J. Brown had a big game as well. He had that 67-yarder. They got Smith, I thought, made some key catches late in the game. So while Barkley was a big factor in the run game, what did you think of the pass game? I know a lot of people talking about the motion numbers. I know we've talked so much about motion, not motion, but the passing percentages for Hurts with the motion as opposed to not having motion. What do you take from that?
That he did better with motion in week 1. It wasn't his best game by any stretch of the imagination. It was, arguably one of his worst when you look at the 4, and some people say 5. I haven't come up with a 5th. I don't know if you can remember. But there were at least 4 turnover-worthy throws, 2 interceptions, and essentially 2 dropped interceptions, although A.J. might have been responsible for sort of playing defensive back on one of them. So he wasn't his sharpest, but the positive is he's if you look around the league yesterday, quarterbacks who aren't playing well let it sort of bother them, and it almost envelops them in games. And the one thing about Jalen Hurts is he's able to put those bad plays in the rearview mirror very quickly and make big plays. You talk about the final drive. He and Devontae Smith were the keys to that drive, not Saquon. I mean, he got the one first down on the ground, sort of carrying people. Devontae got another first down carrying people after the slant, and then he got a 16-yard reception, which are obviously coming from Jalen Hurts. So, Vic Fangio called the Packers offense an all-day sucker. You got to play him for 60 minutes. That's Jalen Hurts. You might have him for 55 minutes, and you still got to play all 60, and I think that sort of showed because he did not have a good game. In fact, PFF graded him the worst start in the Jalen Hurts era from just the film perspective, and mainly those turnover-worthy throws. But he did do better with the motion. And the positive part of that is he played that poorly, and they still scored 34 points.
Yeah. And there was the decision inside the red zone. I mean, that interception's awful. I mean, all you have to do is throw the ball away, take the 3, and then it's a 2-score game. That's something he has to know. But it's the RPO and that kind of stuff that's still, 2 years ago, he seemed to make the right decision every time. And last year, very clunky there. And I thought Friday night he was clunky in that role again.
Yeah, he was. He seemed to be pulling it when he shouldn't have on a number of occasions, and then it all turns around on that last drive a little bit. So, yeah, he wasn't sharp, and he admitted that after the game. It wasn't one of his best performances by any stretch of the imagination, so that's the silver lining. You don't expect him to play that. I don't expect him to play that poorly again this season, and they won the game. So against a very good opponent. From that standpoint, I think it's positive.
Yeah, no doubt. I mean, and you said it. They scored 34 points, and I hate to bring the field up, but is that something? Because I kept saying it just felt like the players didn't have full confidence to be explosive and to do things that maybe they would do on another. I know you weren't there to get a better feel of that field, like the Super Bowl a couple of years ago. That field was a mess. This field almost seemed to be worse, if you can believe that.
Yeah, I do think the field affected both teams pretty significantly, and that's why it gives the pass rush a little bit of a mulligan. As poor as it was, I think it's worthy to put an asterisk there and keep your eye on it for Atlanta. But, I will give them the mulligan because of the field. And then there's the interesting, Zach Ball had a game for the ages.
Yeah.
Is he the only one that can pick out footwear? I don't know. Reed Blankenship had a hell of a game. So there were a couple defenders who had really good games, and most of the rest of the guys struggled. Certainly after the first quarter, they were really good when they got pinned back.
Yeah,
and then all of a sudden kind of fell apart for the majority of the game. So, but you had those outliers. So you wonder from that perspective. But Jordan Love was slipping all over the place the entire game.
I felt like every time. Who did the play-by-play? Noah Eagle said he slips. His footing. He loses. It felt like every single play there was something, and it's an embarrassing thing. But I also it's got to factor into the way some of these plays.
He had a really inaccurate day, Jordan Love, and I think part of that is maybe you can blame a little bit of it on the turf. My concern with Jalen is those were bad decisions, and they were all the same thematic issue, really, really late throws. And I'm talking about the 4 turnover-worthy throws, the 2 that were interceptions and the 2 that could have been. And, he had back-to-back throws. Keyshawn Nixon had a pick 6 just thrown into his hands. He wasn't able to corral it. And then the play after that was the throw across his body into the end zone, the middle of the field, which is a cardinal sin of quarterback. I mean, he's a veteran quarterback. That's what you expect to see from some of the rookies that were playing yesterday. And then the first interception was really late down the middle of the field. Another cardinal rule, don't do. And the throw to AJ that AJ kind of broke up from Jair Alexander turned into defensive back late, very late, all 4 of them. Mm-hmm. So to me, his issues were more decision making, and maybe Jordan was very inaccurate. So maybe you give him a little bit more of, hey, maybe the field was affecting him, but the field to me has nothing to do with that late decision making.
John McMullen, Birds 365, weekday mornings at 8 a.m. on the Jacob Media YouTube channel. You can find him there talking more Eagles and Falcons from the Friday night game. Not the Falcons, the Eagles and the Packers. I want to get your thoughts on the defense, Vic Fangio's defense. I said earlier, I thought that the 2 plays in the first half, the 2 drives, their defense won them the game by getting those stops. I thought people complaining, people tweeting at me, same old defense. This is what the defense is. But those 2 stops early in the game are the difference makers. And there's so much more we can peel on, but I thought that's where the game was won.
Yeah, it was. In hindsight, yeah. I mean, if they give up touchdowns there, they're really probably going to be in trouble. Even though they were able to score points significantly. But if you're down 2 scores against that team, especially touchdowns, you're probably going to be up against it. So they deserve a lot of credit for being put in a bad situation and holding them to field goals back to back and drives. I think one was five plays for 6 yards and 8 plays for 8 yards total. So they were really good early in condensed space. I think that was the thing. And that's where Vic kind of shows up as the game day play caller, and that's where I think he has the big advantage over Sean Desai last year, and the fact that he sort of knows how to manipulate those situations, the right buttons to push, and you're in limited space, so you don't have to defend behind you. You can jump routes, you can do a lot of different things, and the room is so condensed, the spacing is so condensed. That tends to help the defense. That's why it becomes, you see so many teams get bogged down in the red zone. There's not as much space. From that point forward, though, I mean, it was ugly. And they were giving up gas plays, and the run defense was terrible. I forgot, Green Bay was like at 161 and over 6 yards a carry, I think. Yeah, it was not good from the perspective. And by the way, I was talking about, if you watch the film and you see Jordan Love's inaccuracy, those are throws he typically makes. You had 3 kind of drops from Dontavian Wicks that he should have caught, but, they weren't perfectly placed balls, so it's hard to put it completely on the receiver. But, boy, all those yards they piled up, it could have been well over 500 if they left a lot of meat on the bone, is how I would describe it.
They left a lot of meat on the bone. They didn't get a lot of pass rush, Philadelphia. Huff, big signing. What was Sirianni's take on? He didn't get a lot of snaps, and the snaps he did play, APB out for him.
Yeah, he didn't do anything, but, other than Brandon Graham, I don't think anybody did anything all that positively.
That's fair, but also nobody got paid like he did this offseason, which is fair or unfair, but, hey, we brought you in here to rush the quarterback and didn't do it.
No, but that's why I'm saying, I'm not dismissing it. They certainly did that. If that continues, it's a disaster, but I think if you look at the field, I think the one mulligan I'm giving is the pass rush on both sides. It seemed like Brandon Graham for the Eagles, Rashawn Gary for the Packers. Everybody else had a poor game. And I think it had to do, if you think about that explosion you're talking about, more than anything else, that's who needs the explosion on the defensive side of the ball. And you talk about Jordan Love slipping. Look at Bryce Huff. He's slipping every time.
Yeah.
So, was it good? No. It was terrible. I will give him and the pass rush as a whole the mulligan, but I'll have a close eye on it on next Monday night against Atlanta, because if it continues, but I think it's fair to say that the field affected. Kenny Clark against Mekhi Becton, I thought that was going to be a disaster for the Eagles. And Kenny Clark didn't do anything. And that's a hell of a player. Jalen Carter had a really poor game from his typical standard. Yeah, I mean, it wasn't just Bryce Huff, but I get why people are upset about that.
Yeah, I mean, look, and I saw Nolan Smith. I felt like it was the same play every time. He's going out wide, feet slipping out from under him. The lineman is just like pushing him into the ground and letting his feet kind of just slide out. Like you could see 3 doing something. I saw 0 nowhere. 0 was not on. It almost felt like he wasn't on the field for half the play. Then I saw the snaps and said, well, he wasn't on the field. So I guess moving forward, forget the field and his effectiveness. Is this what he is, a part-time player? Like, hey, don't expect him to play a lot of snaps.
Well, that's a disaster if that's what it turns out to be. So, no, I don't think he's a part-time player. If he is a part-time player, things have not gone to plan. And again, I'll give it the mulligan because of the field and because of how it affected others. You mentioned some of them, Nolan Smith. Nobody did anything, which makes it, even more sort of, I'll make up a word, stand outish for Zach Baun. It's like,
Well, I was going to get to him.
From that standpoint, it's like, what did Zach do that nobody else could do? Pretty impressive performance for him.
All right, so Baun, John and you and I don't know how long we've known each other and have had these conversations, but it's been, most of the 15 years I've been on the air. I don't know that there's been an individual performance that was any better than that. I mean, he was unbelievable. And it's either the Saints completely whiffed or he just had one of those nights where he just had it. I got to imagine that's not the player he is. But what do we say about his?
If he is, if he is that player, that was one of those zones. Hall of Fame players can't play like that consistently.
Exactly.
So it's definitely
you're looking at a Defensive Player of the Year candidate if that's him, if that's the player you get.
Yeah, and so you can't expect that every week. But it was, it's like I always use the NBA analogies. It's like the street shooter getting hot and just he can't miss. That was Zach Baun in that game. And, I wouldn't expect it week to week. I think that's unfair.
Well, the way they used him, is that what we can expect? I mean, he was rushing from the edge.
I think so.
Yeah.
He's in the Andrew Van Ginkel role, who, if you saw Van Ginkel yesterday, I don't know if you saw his pick six. That's the guy that I think we're all focused on because he had such a good year with Vic Fangio in Miami. We all thought the Eagles were going to go after him. And it turns out he's from the Midwest, and he was a Vikings fan when he grew up, so he went there. But evidently, Vic focused on Zach Baun. Ironically, they were college teammates, and they're good friends. As somebody who might be able to replicate a little bit of what Andrew Van Ginkel does, and it is sort of a hybrid role where sometimes he's an edge rusher, sometimes he's in coverage, and it's a really difficult role that he excelled in last year in Miami.
Yeah.
And if Zach can offer that, and if you think about Reed Blankenship's interception, which was tremendous as well, but if you look at that play, Zach Baun was the one carrying the tight end down the field and made the angle so much more difficult for Jordan Love to try to pluck the ball in there, and Reed was able to make a great interception. So he was great on the pass rush. He was great stopping the run. He was great in coverage. Yeah, he couldn't miss.
Last week, White inactive. And then it was, they wanted to trade him, and they weren't going to play him anyway. Friday night, I don't know what you thought, but I had my phone was, Dean stinks. Dean's great. Get Dean off the field. What a play by Dean. I don't know what to make of Dean. My personal opinion was he was kind of uneven. He made some splash plays. He's small against the run. But did he do enough to tell you that when White is healthy enough to play, whenever that is, that he ain't getting back on the field?
Well, I think he won that job before that game. So the question is, does he lose that job because of that game? And my answer to that is no. But he did not play well, if you're looking at it from a play-to-play basis, consistency-wise. He did flash a little bit, and people got excited about the big hit. And you saw some of the traits of what he can do. He should have had that pick six that was thrown right to him. And he wasn't able to corral that. But overall, he had a bad tackling day. Wasn't great against the run. So is he going to lose his job after that one performance? I don't think so. But as long as Devin White's here, if he continues to play that poorly, you might revisit that situation down the road. But I don't think the Eagles are making the quick halt after one game, especially on that field. Again, I think a lot of it is everybody's getting a mulligan to that field defensively to a certain extent.
Sean McMullen's with us, Birds 365. Yeah, there's a lot here. Mitchell, he's the other guy. Quinyon Mitchell. I mean, I left very impressed with him. I feel like a lot of people were. What was your takeaway with Mitchell and then how they might use him moving forward?
Yeah, that's another interesting. I think, he's an outside corner, or Vic will just say corner. And it surprised me. We talked a lot about that. It surprised me they were even going to think about moving him inside. And I think now that Isaiah Rodgers has that hand injury at a poor time, I think the Eagles saw Quinyon Mitchell outside, and they're not going to move him now. I think that's the way it's going to shake out. But Avonte Maddox didn't play well either. Maybe Isaiah Rodgers has to start thinking about cross-training because he's very undersized to play outside. And we all speculated maybe because of that size that he would move to the slot. But he's not the best run defender. And, you got to be a good run defender if you're going to be a slot corner. So it'll be interesting how they handle it. But I think Quinyon proved that he should be outside. He should stay outside. And the Packers tested him. I mean, they didn't even look at Slay. They didn't even go near Slay. So it was all, let's take advantage of the rookie. And he gave up some plays, and there were some inaccurate Love throws and maybe a few more plays. But his poise and just his natural ability, you can see the more he plays, the better he's going to get. And I think after Vic sees that performance, I think he'll say, you know what, we're just going to leave him outside.
Yeah, because, I was going to follow up with, Maddox not great the other night, so do they stick with him in the slot and keep Mitchell out there, or do they try something else here? So I guess that they will be really the stories, I guess, leading into Atlanta.
Yeah, I think slot is more of an issue than linebacker, maybe just from the standpoint of what they're going to do. I don't think they're going to pull the plug on Nakobe that quick. If one game turns into 4 or 5 games, maybe then you start talking about it. And the same might be true of Avonte. I mean, it is, again, the field was part of it. And if Zach Vaughn didn't have the game he did, and if Reed Blankenship didn't have the game he did, I mean, maybe you'd give everybody and you wouldn't even ask these questions. But because those two particular players played exceptionally, your question is, because CJ didn't play well either, CJ Gardner-Johnson. So there's more defensive players that didn't play well than the two who played really well.
Yeah. Well, you would say maybe it wasn't pretty, but they still got to win against a good quality team that many people liked in Green Bay. I don't know what their season's going to look like now with the quarterback situation there, but you had a tough game in a neutral setting that you were, kind of disappointed that you didn't get them in Philly. So it's a great way to start off with the win, but plenty to build on, and we'll build on that tomorrow with John McMullen from Birds 365. You can check him out tomorrow morning at 8 a.m. On the Jacob Media YouTube channel. John, we'll talk to you tomorrow, man.
All right, thanks, Mike. Sorry about Nick Sirianni going 3-ish.
It's all good. It all worked out, and we had him here on the Sports Bash. So there you go. McMullen's thoughts here on the Sports Bash Live on 97.3 ESPN, the 97.3 ESPN free mobile app, and streaming live video on the X platform. McMullen's brought to you by Boardwalk Honda. Shop their new lineup of new pre-owned and certified pre-owned Hondas online at boardwalkhonda.com. We've got so much more to go. Big Three's on the way. You're going to hear a bunch of thoughts on this Eagles win from Sal Paolantonio. Sal Pal was the man of the people. He was in Brazil. Then yesterday, he was at Giant Stadium with the G-Men. We've got Phillies tonight. We gave you their lineup earlier. They're taking on Tampa Bay, trying to get back on the winning side. We'll have all that and more. By the way, some breaking news for the fantasy fans out there. Puka Nacua on the IR. Out 4 weeks. So for those of you like me who drafted Puka Nacua, you're not going to have him for the next 4 weeks. He got hurt in that game last night. So that's the first big injury. Well, Jordan Love, too. Love and Nacua. They were the two big injuries that happened yesterday. More Sports Bash coming up on 97.3 ESPN.
We have the perfect.
We wear our work, day by day, stitch by stitch. At Dickies, we believe work is what we're made of. So, whether you're gearing up for a new project or looking to add some tried and true workwear to your collection, remember that Dickies has been standing the test of time for a reason. Their workwear isn't just about looking good. It's about performing under pressure and lasting through the toughest jobs. Head over to Dickies.com and use the promo code WORKWEAR20 at checkout to save 20% on your purchase. It's the perfect time to experience the quality and reliability that has made Dickies a trusted name for over a century.
Thank you for coming, man. The Sports Bash with Mike Gill on 97.3 ESPN and the 97.3 ESPN free mobile app.
2 words, Saquon Barkley, and then throw in A.J. Brown. Big plays by the big playmakers for this football team. You know, they told us going into the game they were going to feature Saquon Barkley, and they stuck to that plan.
That was Sal Paolantonio recapping this Eagles win. 2 words, Saquon Barkley, and then throw in A.J. Brown. So he actually used a couple of names. But it was Barkley, it was Brown, it was Smith. It was the Eagles offense putting up 34 points in the win on Friday night. You heard the game on 97.3 ESPN. This is the Sports Bash live at the Fanatics Sportsbook at the Gallery at Ocean Casino. This hour of the show was brought to you by Key Acura of Atlantic City, your small but friendly dealer. And right now, of course, stop by and say hello to my guy Rocco. They got great deals on all of the available vehicles in the lot right now. And, of course, right now between now and the end of the month, which is always, we're just in the beginning of the month now, so you got plenty of time to get over there and check out all the great deals at Key Acura of Atlantic City. All right, let's get into today's Big Three.
Yeah, Mike, let's stick with what Sal Powell was saying, because I think, first of all, before we get to the next part, what Sal said, for you, Mike, you would assume that you're going to win most of these games because A.J. Brown and or Saquon Barkley have big games. It's not just all on the quarterback.
Well, yeah. I mean, the quarterback always gets the most criticism. When you look at a team, why they win or lose, and you're trying to judge people, the quarterback's always going to be up there, especially one that gets paid the kind of money that Jalen Hurts got paid. I mean, at one point he was the highest paid quarterback in the league. That lasted about 5 minutes. So I have no problem whenever people criticize the quarterback or put them into play. But one of the reasons why Hurts is in position to succeed is because he has great weapons. You know, Daniel Jones, now look, Daniel Jones stinks. But he's not in position to succeed. He has no offensive line, and his weapons, you know, Neighbors is a rookie, so I don't know what to expect. I like Neighbors a lot. But he's not in position to succeed. Jones has no shot. Hurts has a shot because of his weapons. That's one of the reasons why people expect more from him, because he has these weapons. If he's in New York and he's the Giants quarterback, you know, we might think of Hurts as a completely different player.
The reason I bring that up, Mike, is because that was the next point that Sal brought up, was about Jalen Hurts and how he performed on Friday night.
When I talked to Jalen Hurts after the game one-on-one, he quickly flipped the switch when I said to him, hey, it was great to win a game here, the first in NFL history in South America, and he quickly pointed out the mistakes. This is the first time in his career that he has had 3 turnovers and won a game. He's up to this point 0-3. And last year, quarterbacks, when they had 3 turnovers or more, were 7-42.
7-42 obviously is a number that stands out right there. When you turn the ball over that many times, can't have it. I think that's the biggest takeaway from the game, is that they won a game in which the statistics say you generally lose that game. So that's the great sign. It's not like you had to hold on to beat Carolina or hold on to beat the Giants. You held on again and had bad what did Sirianni say after the game? We probably played the worst first quarter imaginable.
Right.
And still found a way to win the game. I thought that was the thing of it. Now, you might say you can't keep winning like that. And he would be right. You can't be sloppy with the turnovers and expect to be a, championship level team. But in week 1, you got to also expect sloppy play. Like, you don't come out and have a Super Bowl performance in your first game.
I don't think we've been able to understand as well is that, Jalen Hurts found a way to overcome what he did early in the game. And, you brought it up earlier, Mike Sirianni mentioned it about the fact that, listen, Jalen had a bad start to the game. And I think if he didn't bounce back, we would be more critical of him today than we are.
Yeah, I mean, he found a way late in the game to get that, that drive that they needed to kind of run that game away and put it away for the Eagles. And, listen, Jalen Hurts has to be better. I mean, we can't sit here and sugarcoat it. We expect more from him. We should expect more from him. I know some people out there are not sold on Jalen. All I need to know is this. He performed on the biggest stage. So he's shown me he can perform on that stage. Now, has he gotten back to that level? No. He needs to show that he can get back to that level. But I do know it's in there. It's not like somebody who's saying, I think he can get to that level. No, I've seen him get to that level. But now he has to get there again. He has to get his play more consistent, and we know he can get to the level where he can perform on the biggest stage. He's already shown us he can do it.
Do you buy into the theory, Mike, that it's week 1 and Jalen can get better as the year progresses?
Sure. I mean, obviously, I just saw him, not just saw him, but I've seen him play at a higher level than he's playing at right now. And look, last year, we say this a lot, they were 10-1 and he was the favorite for MVP, and we were like, he's not playing great, but
right.
Observers still felt that he was helping his team win football games. I thought around the league, if you watched a lot of the games yesterday, and sadly I watched too many of other games that were bad because I got stuck watching the red zone. But, but this is the difference, okay? If you were watching the red zone yesterday, you would see Anthony Richardson throw a ball like 60 yards in the air, with off his back foot. The guy's got an absolute cannon for an arm. But if you watch that game without the red zone, you would say this guy stinks. He has no accuracy, and he only threw the ball 19 times. He was 9 of 19 in the game yesterday.
Yeah, all you need to see was 19 throws.
But that's my point, is if you watched him on red zone, you saw his flash plays. Because they only show him when they score. Because he stinks the rest of the time. They're never putting him on TV, the red zone the rest of the time. So, that's my point. If you watch red zone, you probably think, hey, this guy was pretty good. But if you watch that game, you would say, my God, this guy stinks.
Yeah.
Anthony Richardson stinks. He had so many throws that are so inaccurate. Now, he's got a cannon. He could just air it out, and if you can run underneath and get it, great. But they only let him throw the ball 19 times. As I said, this kid absolutely has no business being a starting quarterback in this league. But it's the state of quarterbacks is, hey, run around, make plays, and throw it as far as you can. That's not an NFL quarterback. But it is in today's game, I guess. But people watching the red zone think, hey, this guy's pretty good. But if you actually watched him play, he was horrible yesterday. Richardson was horrible yesterday.
I did want to point out that John from Cape May texted in, Mike, and he said, hey, Mike, this is John from Cape May, and I agree with you. Red zone sucks.
Red zone, I know I'm in the minority on this, but here's the reason. I say people like the red zone, and now I know why NFL fans are so poorly educated about this game.
Right.
Because if you watched the red zone yesterday, because I got stuck watching it, I now know why people are dumber watching the NFL. You cannot watch that red zone and have a formed opinion of teams.
Right. Exactly.
Because literally, I watched Colts, Texans. That was the game. We had the 3 TVs yesterday. We had Red Zone, and we had Sunday Ticket, and then we had the Phillies was on, and then once the Phillies game kind of was like 6-0, we flipped that off and had an NFL game. But the one game we were kind of zoned in on was that Texans-Colts game. And I said, dude, Richardson stinks. He's terrible. But if you watch Red Zone, you probably thought he was pretty good yesterday.
I wasn't watching Red Zone, so I can't attest to whether that's true or not.
He was not.
I'm taking
good.
your word for it.
He was not. It's just not accurate. I mean, just guys open. Now again, you see the highlights. He fly I'm trying to think who else kind of falls in that category.
Well, for example, I was watching a lot of the Steelers-Falcons game yesterday, and anyone with half a brain watching that game realizes why Justin Fields was traded out of Chicago. Because even though he's on a better team with a better organization, he was still making plays that just made you cringe at times.
Who is this?
Justin Fields.
Oh, yeah, he was running all over the place. I mean, the problem is you got these guys who are tremendous athletes, and they can run around and make plays, and they have great arms, but they don't have any touch. They have no feel. They just it's so frustrating what has happened to this league. But you know what? It's like everything in this world. The people who have gotten control that are allowed to make the decisions have become so enamored with velo and all that nonsense. And you're finding just great athletes and guys who have, but they don't know what the hell they're doing.
Right. They don't know how to actually take the physical abilities they have and translate that into competent play.
Yeah, pretty much.
Mike, finally, speaking of great athletes, Sal Powell followed up with some more thoughts on Saquon Barkley, but he mentioned his takeaway point about the Green Bay Packers.
Packers could not cash in on the turnovers, only had 9 points off the Eagles' 3 turnovers. That was another contributing factor, but it was the big playmaking of Saquon Barkley when they needed it.
Well, listen, I think that's the big difference between this year's team and last year's team. If they needed the big play, they didn't trust DeAndre Swift to give him that big play. They didn't trust Miles Sanders to give him that big play 2 years ago. They trust the passing game. But
right.
If the other team is taking the pass away, 2 years ago, you had Hurts make that big play with his legs. You didn't get that from Hurts last year, and they didn't trust Swift to do it. Now they have a guy that they trust to close a game out. That's a big difference.
It's a huge difference. And when you have that guy, it definitely makes how you feel about the Eagles throughout a game different, because now you're just saying, like, hey, if we can get the lead, right? It's the attitude. If we get a lead and we can hold it, we can hold them. Because the Eagles did win the time possession battle yesterday.
Yeah.
On Friday night.
Yeah, listen, I like the Barkley signing, and I only have higher expectations about what they're going to get from him moving forward.
By the way, Mike, before we get out of here, I did want to bring up some non-sports breaking news. James Earl Jones has passed away, Mike.
Oh, Darth Vader.
Darth Vader, Field of Dreams, Bell Atlantic mobile commercials.
I was going to say, some phone company.
Yeah, it was New Jersey Bell, Bell Atlantic.
Yeah, what an iconic voice.
He has passed away at the age of 93.
Oh, man, that voice is just unbelievable. That's sad to hear. By the way, can I quickly go off on a soapbox on something? Deion Sanders has no business being a Division I football coach. No business. He is so ill-prepared and unqualified for that job. What Deion Sanders is a great marketing guy. Okay? I give him a lot of credit as a marketing guy. But he has no business. Deion Sanders has no business being a Division I football coach. It is utterly disgraceful that he has that job. He cares about his son. He is the guy who has the kid and starts his own travel team with his kid and his kid's best friend, and then takes 9 other randos and they stink. And you're like, hey, what's wrong with this team? Well, he took his son and his son's best friend, started a team, and then couldn't find anybody else to play with them.
Right.
They are so ill-prepared. Listen, when he was – now, some people would say to me, look at his record as a football coach when he was at – what school
Jackson State.
Jackson State. He went to Jackson State and had guys that had no business playing at Jackson State on that team. He had guys that should have been playing at major Division I schools that went there because of him. So, yes, he is a good recruiter and marketing guy. But watching them play the last 2 weeks, he is so bad as a clock manager, and that team is so unprepared. I am like watching them play and just absolutely pulling my hair out at how unprepared that team is. I hate to say that, though. He has no business being a head football coach at this level.
I don't disagree with that at all. I
watch,
just,
but
for
listen,
me,
the difference between Colorado and Nebraska and the preparation. You have one guy who belongs, Matt Rule, is a good head coach. They're not great. That Nebraska team, by the way, Colorado beat them last year, right?
Correct.
Colorado beat that team last year. Look how different they are this year. How much more prepared Nebraska was in that game on Saturday.
I think, to me, the point you brought up a moment ago, I think is even more amplified, at least for me, Mike, which is you mentioned how Deion's the coach who got his son and all of his friends to play for a team and forgot to build out the rest of the team. The biggest difference between Deion, Coach Prime, whatever he's supposed to be called, and Matt Rule is that Matt Rule went out and said, my team stunk last year. I'm going to go out and recruit the strongest, most physical dudes I can find. And you saw in the game on Saturday night, those Nebraska players were just bigger, stronger, and just they had more want in them.
Well,
and the Colorado offensive line looked like a bunch of guys didn't belong in the FBS level.
No, to go out and recruit skill position players, that's one thing. It's like anything. It's like skill position players are fun, like on draft night.
Right.
Okay? It's fun when you draft a skill position player. But when you really have to get dirty and find the offensive lineman, that's a boring night at the draft. Deion Sanders doesn't want to go recruit linemen. That's not fun. That's not flashy. And he has no desire to find offensive linemen, which you would think he would because he's going to. But did you hear the story about, so when they score a touchdown, is this true? That he told the Colorado pep band that they can't play the music, they have to play his son's song?
He has not confirmed that to the media yet. Apparently, Chris Vanini, the Athletic, was saying that they're hoping to ask Deion at his next press conference if that's true or not.
Jeez. Now, I didn't hear the explanation of why his kid left the field with 2 minutes left.
Oh, is Shiloh or
No,
Shador?
Shador.
Shador had to go concussion protocol.
Okay, then that's fine. I mean, if he left because of that, that's
he
fine.
He took a direct hit to the head. It was helmet to helmet.
Because he came out of the game and then he left the field early.
Yeah, he went into concussion protocol.
Yeah, I was wondering why he left. I didn't hear what happened. Then Shiloh got hurt, though, right?
He broke his arm, yeah.
Yeah, he's done.
Yeah, he's done. By the way, really quick, I found one of the James Earl Jones Bell Atlantic commercials. You want to hear it?
Sure.
Congratulations. You've opened up an auto repair shop. Question is, how do you find the autos that need repair and how do you steer them your way? Answer, with a very effective ad. An ad that gets results. An ad that will attract the people you want to attract. People who are seriously looking to do business. People who right now may be suffering from a broken cream puff. Drive your business with an ad in the Bell Atlantic Yellow Pages, where people go to buy, find, or do just about anything.
Does the Yellow Pages still exist?
I have no idea, but I can listen to that guy's voice all day.
My great aunt, my grandmother's sister, she used to be an operator for Bell Atlantic out there in Pleasantville.
Wow.
In that building. You know, when you pick up the phone and you hit dialed 0.
Yeah.
And the operator picked up.
That was her.
She did that. All right, we'll wrap up the show coming up next here on the Sports Bash. Live at the Fanatic Sportsbook at the Gallery Bar Book and Games at Ocean Casino Resort in Atlantic City.
We wear our work, day by day, stitch by stitch. At Dickies, we believe work is what we're made of. So, whether you're gearing up for a new project or looking to add some tried and true workwear to your collection, remember that Dickies has been standing the test of time for a reason. Their workwear isn't just about looking good. It's about performing under pressure and lasting through the toughest jobs. Head over to Dickies.com and use the promo code WORKWEAR20 at checkout to save 20% on your purchase. It's the perfect time to experience the quality and reliability that has made Dickies a trusted name for over a century.
The Sports Bash with Mike Gill on 97.3 ESPN and the free mobile app.
All right, getting ready to get out of here. By the way, James Earl Jones was in The Sandlot and in Field of Dreams.
He was also Mufasa in The Lion King.
And Mark Hamill just tweeted, R.I.P. Dad.
Darth Vader.
There you go. Darth Vader. That's the first one that comes to mind for me. Play of the Day is brought to you by Bet365. Whatever the sport, whatever the moment, it's never ordinary at Bet365. Bryce Hall tonight over 29.5 receiving yards. Going to parlay that with George Kittle over 44.5 receiving yards. Get that at plus 226. And you'll make a couple bucks on that, Josh.
By the way, you did get your 2 picks on Friday, right? Because you had Devonta Smith over on the receiving yards, and you had Saquon anytime touchdown.
Saquon anytime touchdown was the play of the year. I mean, that was an easy one, right? 3 of them. Got 3 of them. So I had the Saquon anytime, and so we went on a little streak with the play of the day. So make sure you get along on that Bet365 play of the day, whatever the sport, whatever the moment. It's never ordinary at Bet365. You know, I just went to my Bet365 app on my phone. Got to update the. We got a new update coming in right there, so I'll update that. That'll do it for me here at the Fanatic Sportsbook at Ocean Casino's Gallery Bar, Book, and Games. We'll be back here next Monday, and on Thursday you can check me out over at Tropicana, and on Friday you can check me out over at Charlie's in Summers Point. So another couple chances this week to get out on the road and check us out. By the way, thanks to Rocco and the team over at Key Acura of Atlantic City. They bring you the 5 o'clock hour of the Sports Bash on 97.3 ESPN. We got Monday Night Football tonight. I like the Jets tonight, by the way. I like the Jets. Take care, everybody.
We wear our work day by day, stitch by stitch. At Dickies, we believe work is what we're made of. So whether you're gearing up for a new project or looking to add some tried and true workwear to your collection, remember that Dickies has been standing the test of time for a reason. Their workwear isn't just about looking good. It's about performing under pressure and lasting through the toughest jobs. Head over to Dickies.com and use the promo code WORKWEAR20 at checkout to save 20% on your purchase. It's the perfect time to experience the quality and reliability that has made Dickies a trusted name for over a century.